Da-dum dum da-dum dum dum. Merry Christmas.
Hi, Niche.
Hey, how's it
Merry
going?
Christmas.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see your faces.
So, what were we talking about just before we went live?
I don't know. I just kind of started the stream, kind of strolled in, and we have a special guest today. We have Eytan Zana,
Hey, what's
obviously, formerly known as J.J. Abrams,
up? That's me.
and then this homeless guy,
Yeah. So, and I have my hookah, so I'm going to be doing.
Shaddy Safadi.
By the way, Dinar got me this. Thank you, Dinar. I
Dinar.
got it from Iraq. This
Is Dinar your
Iraqi
friend?
hookah, don't be
Oh,
afraid.
there you go. There you go. Is Dinar your friend?
Yeah, he's awesome. He
Cool.
was in the Netherlands. We went and saw him, actually. Dinar is a guy who worked for OPB for a while and still works with me. And, yeah, he's just a cool dude. And we
He's
went-
not in arts, though, right?
Yeah, he is.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I
He's great artist.
kind of made an assumption.
Yeah, but you don't know anything. You just live in your Polish cave.
I just farm potatoes all the time.
You just got back from fighting.
Yeah, I literally got back from my farm. I actually peeked out from it, a little bit, got the rock up, kind of crawled from under it.
Star Wars, I liked it. We were just talking. Didn't like 8, like 9. You weren't gonna see it, right?
I was waiting.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
were.
I was waiting to hear what my friends thought.
Yeah,
'Cause I can't. The critics are all over the place.
They're all
for
over the place,
everything,
yeah.
so
Right.
I just,
Yeah.
I just ask people.
I haven't
whose
seen
taste
it,
I
and
trust.
I'm totally fine if you spoil it.
Okay,
I don't care.
I'm not gonna spoil it, but so don't be afraid of spoilers. But I just wanted to say I read Rotten Tomatoes. I can't help it, right? We all go on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Who goes on Rotten Tomatoes anyway?
I can't help it. It shows up in the Fandango.
But,
It
like,
says the percentage.
Yeah, you hear about it even if
hear
you
Right.
don't
about
look
it.
at
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
You hear
People tell
about it,
you.
and Last Jedi was the only Star Wars movie ever, including the prequels, that I didn't like, and that got a 91, right? But
Yeah.
The audience score was like 40 something or 50 something.
Yikes.
Whereas in this movie it was the opposite. The audience score was like 86, and then the critics were like 51.
Sure.
And you know
That's
what
so
I think
weird.
about Rotten Tomatoes is actually this is an important point because I think in making any kind of art, it's really hard not to be swayed by the critics. And even as an individual artist, like I want to not be affected by Rotten Tomatoes, but I have to try really hard to not be affected by it. Like I want to just like the movie, and when any movie like that I watch, I watched it, I had an experience. Like I was telling Eytan, I teared up twice during this last Star Wars
You're
movie.
crying watching it?
I was watching it by myself, and it's manly to cry, guys. It shows vulnerability, which is strong.
That's pretty strong. My friend Andrew was actually crying watching Chappie.
No, I don't believe you.
He did.
I like Chappie too. Chappie was good, but my point is, Rotten Tomatoes.
I cannot be friends anymore.
Yeah, but that's because you were raised by bears. Once a couple generations move forward and we evolve as a society, right? It'll be okay
Right.
for dudes to cry in public.
Okay.
It's not there yet.
Okay.
Anyway, the movie was good. It was affecting. But I think the Rotten Tomatoes skews our view, and we tend to retroactively, even me, I tend to retroactively question my own like of something, and I just think it's
Right.
important to like it when you liked it, and whatever everyone says, fine, whatever they said. But you have to really remember, hey, when I saw it, though, I did like it.
Yeah, I think a lot of times you have a much better experience when you just go see a movie without trailers, without hearing what people said, and then like you see it kind of right away.
Yeah.
You'll enjoy it so much more without knowing what other people thought. You'll
Totally.
just be like, oh, that was really good, and then I'm oftentimes surprised by the score too.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't agree with that at all. That was like awesome movie.
Yeah. And also, when you look at the scores, if it's got 50%, let's say, half the people, oftentimes, loved it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, like, we all tend to think naturally that the aggregate is what matters.
Right.
And obviously, the aggregate doesn't matter because Donald Trump is president. Can we get political on this podcast?
No.
Ooh, don't do that.
Please no.
Okay.
I don't want to get political, but before we delve deeper into this weird conversation, and that has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that I'm currently a Disney employee, and there's no sponsorship involved whatsoever. I wanted to say everyone who's joining us live, thank you so much. And obviously there's going to be a bunch of people listening to it later. I introduced you guys already. We're good friends. We hang out and all that stuff. Actually, you guys hang out. I kind of sit in my cave.
I see you once in a while.
But I figured, yeah, that's true. It's true.
Show
we
up
go for
randomly.
lunch, randomly. But I figured it would be good to do like a little special, a little Christmas special. Get to hang out, and you guys were first to say, "Yep." So, yeah. I just want to like say that as a thank you for everyone who's actually listening to it right now. So
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, just
Thanks
to be
for
nice and
having
jolly.
us. Thanks to everyone who's watching.
You want to go through my questions that I wrote down?
We're gonna get into it, but before we're gonna jump, because Shaddy was actually bombarding me with messages like, dude, we're doing this thing, and I want to be prepared. I have questions. Like, hey man, like I don't do it normally that way.
Don't do it that
Yeah,
way.
God forbid we prepare anything.
Yeah,
like
like
that.
I
That
just
would be the
don't never
worst thing in the
prepare.
world.
Fair. That way is the
Um,
correct way, but keep going.
if
Your
it
mic's
depends
over
on
here,
what kind
by
of
the way.
format you do,
Oh,
Mr.
yeah,
Joe
true.
Rogan, by the way,
Yeah.
it depends on the format, Joe.
Yeah. It's true actually because I listen to Stay Tuned with Preet, which is a
Yeah,
podcast, and he like all his questions are exactly lined up with exactly what the person's expertise is.
I think Joe, like if we're talking about Joe, I think what him having like 1,500 podcasts done already.
Yeah.
It
He
it
knows
comes
what's
with
up.
experience. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
he
comes
knows
with
what's up.
experience. I don't think he ever prepares.
Yeah.
He's just so experienced already.
Yeah.
But I wanted to start with a subject of like maybe doing a quick summary and figuring out what do you guys think were like the highlights of the year in terms of the industry. Because we could talk about films, we can talk about anything we want, right?
Right.
And just to say, I'm trying to watch chat, but the computer is kind of far, so I'm not really. I'm just seeing letters that are appearing on the screen. We are going to leave the QA towards the end, so if you guys have any questions, we'll try to go through as many of them as possible as the time permits. But I don't want to interrupt the conversation all the time with this podcast, so we'll do it at the end.
And also, if
that's
the
fine.
sound of this thing is messing anything up, right in the chat, someone check and tell me to stop.
You should stop probably. It's the most. If you eat, drink, and do stuff that's not a sound of voice, usually it's very annoying. But nah, just go for it.
Okay.
Anyways, what do you guys think is, in your estimate, like the not necessarily the best or the worst, but the biggest thing that happened in the industry? And it could be anything. It could be the best movie you've watched, and oh my god, like the achievement of VFX storytelling or whatever that has direct relationship to what we do, or a new software that came out, or a development in whatever. What do you guys think?
The highlight of my year was not some software coming out. I'm sorry, but I do think The King was the best movie I've seen in a while.
The King.
And I
Yeah,
remember
it's good.
like 20 seconds in, just sitting back and being like, "This is the best thing I've ever seen."
It
This
did have
is
that
so
opening
cool.
shot with
Oh
the
my
beautiful
God.
sunset lighting. The
Yeah.
King is a movie on Netflix, by the way.
Yeah, everyone
Right.
should watch it. It's probably one of the best movies this year for sure.
Yeah, I think the colors, the cinematography, like the story, everything about it. I watched it 3 times in the first week it came out. I just couldn't get enough of it.
You know what's interesting about that being your choice is that I bet you not a lot of people would have said that, and I think that your love of that movie points to something that at One Pixel Brush we're always kind of, it's an aesthetic quality that like when you give talks and workshops, you tend to talk about fundamentals, but like 50% of it, I think for working with us is that you have the same taste as me,
Right.
which is the same taste as Eytan,
Yeah, definitely,
which is
like-
generally the same taste as you.
Generally.
Yeah, generally. you go a little more anime than I would. But no, we all have, I think, what I would call similar taste, and I think that comes from what we like to say is classy taste. And when you talk about The King, I know what you're talking about when you say the cinematography and all that, but can you tell people who may not already share your exact taste why it was so good to you?
Oh, I guess what I liked about it was so, like, every shot was framed in such a strong way where they would silhouette a character. It would be like, so the opening shot is not a spoiler, but it's a battlefield and someone's walking, and they're the only thing that's sticking up. So just compositionally, there's a bunch of things low on the ground, and you're just following one figure, and he's backlit with like the perfectly exposed sunset, like perfect
and
colors.
the sunset is not a strong sunset.
Yeah.
It's this little hazed out
Yeah.
orange dot.
It's just such
It's
a
really subtle.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful color palette. It's not like them against a green screen and they matte painted what everyone thinks a sunset is. They filmed something on location and got it exactly right to
And it-
feel like you were on that misty sunrise battlefield.
And the moment was grim. So if you had
Definitely.
an idyllic sunset, it might have not made sense for the storytelling.
Exactly.
That goes back to a concept art thing. And I'm only picking on it because I think it's so interesting that that you like something, but you also like it because of how toned down it is. And a lot of concept art, and I fall into this trap too. I just want everything, the baby in the bathwater into the shot. I used to
You want
not
the
be.
Michael Bay?
Yeah, I want the Michael,
Michael Bay
Bay.
shot.
Inside, I'm a Michael Bay. A Michael Bay. But I just know that Michael Bay's that aesthetic isn't as classy, and so I try to make my stuff classier. But the classiness is not naturally in me. I have to like work hard at it.
I think you're allowed to like Michael Bay though.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think I I get to a point where I'm like, all the movies I like tend to not have concept artists that are on them. I don't know why, but I like really grounded like period piece movies. I'm more drawn to that because I just feel like I'm kind of transported to a very believable time and place. And I think a lot of times, if you took like what's cool as a concept and made it into a movie, it can feel like really over the top in the execution. Like the budget isn't good enough to make it cool and grounded, like in a way where Game of Thrones really sells things by just like one matte painting in the background.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, and then the magic was layered in really slowly, and I think we share that aesthetic too for like any kind of fantasy element or magical element. It's cool if it like it gets built up believably and slowly. I think that's what makes Game of Thrones
they're not
so
like
awesome.
starting the show with like some crazy chase scene through like whatever the dwarf lair or something like that. It starts out in like a little village or like in a forest, and it's something you've seen, but there's a little twist on it.
And I think one of the most amazing choices about Star Wars is that they decided early on that the Force was going to be nothing effects-wise.
Good call.
Like that was just, I think that with all the crazy stuff, because of the context of how much incredible design and fantasy craziness is going on in that IP, the fact that they decided that the most extreme awesome power was just going to be something invisible that you couldn't see at all was a really
Tai
awesome
Chi.
choice. Yeah, yeah, and it made the magic feel more magic.
And it's, it might even be a counterpoint to my own point, but like why Avatar worked, like they did floating islands, sure, but they looked at a real place on Earth and just said, what if these were floating?
Yeah.
These mountains in China, this exact thing that we saw. And yeah, the blue people is the made up part, but everything else, it feels like it has this level of a grounded reality, and it's pushed just a little bit, and I love that kind of middle ground.
Yeah, even in Avatar, when the bad guy came outside and was shooting at the plane, and he had to put the mask on,
right.
It reminded you of the fiction of the world, because he opened the door, the all the stuff came in that made everyone not able to breathe, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right, we're in a crazy fantasy world.
Yeah, and I feel like they sold the world, and that's what I think I'm drawn to in anything I see or participate. I want to know what the world is, and I want to hang out there.
Yeah.
And so any movie that has a sort of a appealing place to hang out, I'm automatically drawn towards that.
Me too. I'm also biased towards magical places that are pretty. Like you lean more towards the gritty, but like Blade,
I don't know.
No?
I don't know. I wouldn't say so. I think everything kind of goes through a filter of believability. As you said, there is some kind of grounded element, but I think there's certain films where I can appreciate the cinematography, colors, production design, costume design, all of those things, and they end up being really bad movies in general. Like generally, just like not really enjoying them as a movie, but more of a spectacle. Let's put it this way.
So you're admiring like the craft of it, but not
right.
necessarily.
I understand what went into making that aspect of the film really good, and then imagining it from a production point of view, like okay, like how it was all constructed, all of those things. Versus there are certain movies where kind of everything hits the right mark,
Yeah.
And I would say the King was one of them.
Yeah, definitely.
Like was clearly one of them. Good character development, good story,
Right.
based in reality, really well made. The cinematography outstanding in my opinion, one of the best in this year easily.
And what was so cool about that movie is you could easily turn it into a movie where it's like a complete bummer because it's like a horrific thing that they're showing, but they balance it out with his friend John, who's like this like hilarious comedic character, and their banter is so fun because the King is all serious and he's like super jovial.
Or out of place music, or music where it's music like there are some moments in the film where it's just quiet, like there's no music, no sounds, and it makes sense. And there are movies that just don't do that. They like the music has to be everywhere.
Yeah, like I like to just sit in it for a second.
Right.
Sometimes we move the camera too much, we cut too much, or they try and not make you bored. But I like hanging out and just doing a slow pan shot.
Soaking in.
Yeah, soaking it in.
Like Revenant, I remember watching in the theater and thinking it was the best movie I'd ever seen at the time that I saw it.
Yeah, that was an experience.
Yeah,
because
because I was like, I've never been transported to a place like that, and I posted on Facebook about this. But my only beef with the new Star Wars is that, and some of the older ones too, because I was rewatching some of them, is that they have these mind-blowing effect shots. There's a shot where Finn and Rose are like leaving on an AT-AT that is like has the or an ATST, the small one. They're leaving, and everything's exploding around them. And I'm looking in the background because I watched it like 10 times over, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, the amount of work. And it's literally a half-second shot, a half second. And I'm like, guys,
Poor VFX
just
people.
millions of hours.
just stop. And then after they get out, they get into a ship, and the ship flies up, and it's truly one of the most amazing pan shots I've ever seen. But it lasts for a half a second, and I'm like, guys, I wasn't gonna get bored. Just just slow down. Just let me see the amazing shit for a second.
Yeah, the frequency of detail in everything becomes overwhelming and sort of like really annoying.
You need like a few seconds for your eye to catch on
Yeah.
to something.
It's almost like if everything is awesome, then nothing's awesome. Like they're bombarding you. Every single thing in the shot is cool, so you don't know.
But if they
You
did
know
that,
where
it'd
to
be
look.
okay if they let me have a chance to drink it in. You know, in
Right.
Revenant, they start
Right.
in the water and then just boom and slowly up the water.
Yeah, that
and
was
into the
really cool.
trees
That
and-
sunrise battle scene.
Yeah.
I like sunrise battle scenes, I guess.
If you think about it, like if you look back at the 1995 Ghost in the Shell, they kind of like did that balancing act really well. I mean, at the time, it was watching sci-fi movies. You know, right now there's so much frequency and so many of them that it's almost becoming like it's kind of boring. Like the sci-fi becomes like the commodity almost.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But back then it was very rare. It was very difficult to make that kind of stuff, and I really liked the pacing. So you had those moments where there was just literally just city shots that let you soak in the world and kind of like dive in and get like real breath of fresh air before you go back into the action. You know, like let
Yeah.
you rethink what you just saw, what you just heard, and
I
like
think-
get ready for the
I
next
think
act.
Avatar had that too because it had these shots.
Yeah,
in
they
3D.
did.
I felt like
Yeah.
I knew Home Tree really well because
Yeah.
they slowed down on it.
Sure.
And they would do those camera zooms where they would like you'd see it from far, you'd see it from flow. The camera would move kind of slowly. Because when the Home Tree crashed, it should have been chaotic, but you really got the sense that that thing was coming down.
Okay.
I wanted to see. My only problem with that movie really was like, where are all the kids? There's like one kid. Like, isn't
just
this,
died.
Is this a whole society? Why are they all
You should write-
25?
You should
Yeah,
write
I-
to- you should
wasn't
write
like
to the city.
infant mortality like 40%
Where
back
are all the
then? Some
kids?
crazy stuff. They all
It
died.
just would have been cool as if they're trying to, I guess, make us believe in the tribe. It would have been cool to see like a day in the life
Yeah.
sort of moment.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I believe the world. I was sold on it.
Is there anything outside of film world, like outside of just film itself, that got you like, wow, this is something?
OPB artists are constantly amazing me with their ability. And I think we already knew this. This is old news, but like concept art's changed a lot in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Just a little bit.
It's changed a lot, and it's gotten so 3D. And I don't mean that as a bad thing, but it's gotten so 3D. And the artists that I worked with on Last of Us 2, we did like 850 concepts for Last of Us 2. And along with Eytan, because Eytan obviously is in-house at Naughty Dog. And
I did 849 of them.
and just the level of quality that rose because of how easy the tools got. So like Blender being free, basically for anyone, having this open source 3D software package that like anyone can use and that people can build plugins for. Which there's all these amazing plugins, and a lot of them we used. Like Dead Leaves really came in handy. There's all these really easy, quick ways, and Quixel and Daz, and some of my artists are starting to use ZBrush. So these single concept artists, because this is a concept art podcast, right? These single concept artists being like moderately versed in like 5 software packages is almost a prerequisite, without losing sight of the ability to draw and paint. And I don't mean draw and paint because I think this gets a little bit murky of like, oh, you can go outside and do an oil painting. Just that you can design shapes really well, which you learn from drawing and painting. You can be
Right.
someone who can design shapes really well in your mind and just know how to move a light to make the shapes how you want in 3D. That could be fine. But you recognize the shapes that are good because of your ability to draw and paint really well.
Don't you think though that this becomes like a never-ending treadmill?
What do you mean?
Like you you know, back when did I start the podcast? Like a couple of years ago, right? I think it was 2015. And you guys were one of the first
That was
guests
5 years ago, man.
5 years ago.
Oh man.
Jesus Christ. Um, back then we were talking about if you're not learning 3D, you're you know, you might be left out
Yeah.
in the industry.
Yeah.
And you know, like I just recently went back to work in the art department. You know, I started working on the Marvel shows,
Mhm.
and it was like when I started in the art department 4 years ago. Barely anyone. There wasn't that many people that used 3D. Some of them were getting into it. Most of them were like still photo bashing. You know, there are outliers. Obviously, you know, if you talk about Fausto and Vitali and all the other
Steve
guys.
Messing.
Yeah, Steve Messing. They're the best in the industry. They knew everything already, right? Back then. But like, you know, it's like looking at ArtStation. You have really good people, really good artists, and then some average artists that are still working in the industry, right?
Yeah.
It's the same with the art department. There are people that joined the art department like way back when, but they built so much connections and experience with production designers and reliability that, you know, whether the art looks good or not, they would reliably produce good content, right?
Yeah.
Um, or good for what it is meant to be for,
Yeah.
which is helping production designer actually design the world
Right.
and help the director understand what's going to be in the film. And right now, I don't think I even know anyone who doesn't use 3D at this point.
Anymore.
And that's our department, film art department, right? Video games, I feel video games in general are more progressive in terms of what artists
that is
do.
interesting because when I've worked with film or even animation, I don't know if it's because of the guilds or because of the way the politics are, because it's harder to break into those fields.
It's
I
very
feel like-
difficult to get into the art department. Like
Yeah.
if the film is made in US, meaning it starts in Los Angeles because that's what vast majority of the film production starts,
Yeah.
you have to be a union member
And I
to
feel
work
like
on it.
that's great, but I think in some ways it hurts all the kids. There's always some kid, and I know this because I
Right.
run a company where I'm hiring people, so it benefits me to find people who know stuff. And there are like 20-year-olds, there's 19-year-olds who live in their mom's basement in Siberia that could be working on Call of Duty because they sat down with some YouTube tutorials and they learned how to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard, by the way, and that those resources are completely available. Whereas when you become an old guy, and I'm really satisfied. This happens to Eytan now a little bit too. It's probably happened to you. It happened to me a long time ago. But like where you work your whole life as a professional, and maybe people still consider you Eytan and still consider you Mache, and people still walk up to me. And
You don't do art anymore.
You know, I do a little bit now. I'm getting back.
Nah, you don't do art anymore.
Yeah, I posted like a piece of art.
You're
like
trying.
3 months ago, but I still get the credit of like, oh, it's me. Yeah, great. You're a great concept artist. I'm like, am I? Have you seen what like a child can do that I can't do? And that is like those kids are coming up, and they're coming up fast, and they're coming up all the time. So I think it's really inspiring. And just like the Rotten Tomatoes things, I think it's important not to deify concept artists, turn them into god kings, because I just want to point out there are children better than us.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
for sure.
22-year-olds who like know more software, have a great design sensibility, and that can kill it.
Yeah,
because of
all
online
your guys just destroy me.
Yeah, no, I don't know about that.
No. A lot of them.
Maybe in Last of Us 2 style,
A
but
lot
not.
of them fuck me up.
Where do you think it's going?
I think it's going to. You move your hand and a thing shows up in VR, and
Right.
You just say what you want
With
and
the
there's
AR
There's
and-
no drawing, and there's just you say I want a concrete building from Seattle, and it shows up and it's from Seattle, and then you adjust the tweak of the little things a little bit. And I think the ease of the technology, and that destroys our profession, right? It makes it so you don't need concept
It makes a
artists.
commodity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it the super and simple thing to do. And I
Right.
think some people could be like, well, that sucks. I'm getting depressed. Is concept art all going to just be I wave a hand and a whole world is created? And I think it does kill a certain aspect of our art, but it just says, all right, well, if a program can make a building in a second and it didn't need you, then find something else to be good at in the art world, meaning make a better layout, make a better compositional arrangement. Like whatever the computer takes over that we don't have to do anymore, that beats us, then we don't have a job in that anymore. You find yourself something else to do in that same space. So I think now what happened is the reason Spider-Verse, Klaus, all these like really cool styles have been able to come out is because technology's gotten so much easier that people can be like, okay, well, we already know how to do realistic stuff, so how are we
Right.
gonna do something
We've seen
different?
all the VFX in the world.
Yeah,
You know, when you watch Sicario, the border scene,
yeah.
you know, it's all 3D.
What-
Yeah, it's crazy.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The like car, what is that? The convoy going on the freeway. It's
Really?
all
Yeah,
3D,
all the like aerial. I mean, the cars when they're like close, it's actual shot, but all the like helicopter shots, all that
Yeah, it's
stuff.
like
The
3D
board the
cars
border
and-
itself where you see like the line and everything.
It's
Ah.
map
It's all
paintings and
3D.
stuff. Yeah, it's kind of nuts.
Yeah, and I think it's just gonna get easier and easier to
But
do that.
yeah, I think as the trend goes, like if you just look at the types of programs that are out now versus when you both started, everything's getting easier and easier to do what you want, and it's just up to us to have a developed eye for it
Yeah.
because
Right.
the floor of entry is a lot easier to get into, but it also means like the ceiling is higher. What they expect the
Absolutely.
quality to look like is now higher because we can do it faster and easier than before. And I never see that as a bad thing. I see that as a challenge for me to learn a new thing, that a new cool way I can make art. It's never like a negative thing to me.
Well, for Shaddy, it's too late because it's 50.
I know. I'm like 65
But I want to segue on that because on top of everything we talk about, right? Like how everything is kind of going towards 3D and then VR. I would say Unreal Engine is probably next 2 years one of the biggest things that everyone should start getting into.
Yeah. My
Um,
girlfriend actually just started using Unreal.
yeah,
And
it's
she made a level in one semester.
it's a
that
big
was
buzz
like,
right now.
she-
It's
that we would
definitely
wear VR and walk around, and it was
Yeah, that was
beautiful.
really cool.
You saw
Like
it, right?
castle ruins and a
Yeah.
forest and
Yeah, yeah.
stuff. Yeah, and it was crazy. We
Yeah.
were just walking around in VR.
Yeah, and she made it. She learned Unreal and made it in one semester. So-
right. Yeah, so that's something that's going on. I think for me the biggest highlight of last year, it's not really that something happened specifically last year, although you could pinpoint to specific developments that happened, or not last year, this year actually, end of this year, is AI. I think AI is like the biggest unknown that just throws wrench into everything. I guess the easiest one to point out to would be the Guam, or whatever it's called, the NVIDIA one with the landscape.
Oh, I have no
Landscape
idea what
creation.
you're talking about.
It's
It's where you draw doodles and it turns into a landscape.
Oh.
Did you see
yeah,
that?
you
No,
just
what is that?
draw shapes and choose. Okay, this shape is mountain.
Green,
this shape
blue,
is
and yellow, and then it just says, "Here's a field, here's a mountain, here's a
right.
thing." Remember, it was
Right.
You
kind
do squiggles.
Squiggles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
and it turns the point. I mean, it doesn't look that great right now, right? It's like it's whatever. If you would have the result of it 10 years ago, would be like, oh my god, you're a god of concept art,
No, it's true.
right?
If that's just where we're starting, like it's gonna get
Yeah.
crazier. Yeah, and I think too. We had been talking about this a while ago, where we're like, I want Photoshop to have things that are like procedural, like a branch brush that will, I can tell it how many random things to have, and I'll just draw a stroke, and it will make a procedural shape. I want
Mhm.
more tools like that where there's a little bit of an algorithm, but I'm controlling it. I feel like that's where things are going, where we're going to be kind of like teaching the computer what we want. Maybe we're even making paintings to like tell the algorithm what
Yeah.
to do. Maybe
Yeah.
that's what our job is. That's crazy.
But I think too, you guys have I want to point out, you have a personality. We all do, or a sensibility that is okay with that. But I think it also comes from your own like.
I'm not okay with that at all.
Oh no.
No, with AI, no.
Hmm.
With software, I don't care.
What are you not okay with?
Here's my point of contention when it comes to all of it, mainly AI, but generally all of it, and that might be not my mind can change completely depending on how things in the world develop. But right now, if you think about where the money is at, right? Like, because we're doing it not only for our like, just having fun and really enjoying being artists, and we have the creative minds where it's just like restlessness of always thinking about creation. If you're not thinking about creating something, you're always observing the world, like looking at, this is pretty, this is that, right? It can get exhausting, by the way. But average person, and I'm not saying it in a condescending way. It's just like we are born with different DNAs, right? And creativity, the fact that your brain pursues the visual aspect of it, is, from what I hear, is rare. I might be wrong. Um, but it reflects in the market. So if you look at the movies that are popular and make the most money, those are the movies that are not the greatest ones. Like, story wise, they're okay. Visually, they're like okay. They're like the noise kind of aspect of it, you know. They're not masterpieces by any chance. Like Blade Runner, the latest one, is one of the best movies of last year in terms of how it looks. It was a flop. It was a flop.
I liked it,
I know you liked it, but it was a flop. Market wise, it was a flop.
but I also liked Avengers.
Right. Okay.
You can
Anyways,
have both.
And I also
you can
liked,
like whatever.
I liked Irishman.
What
too.
I'm saying is that reflects down the pipeline to us, because people that hire us, the big companies, producers, you know, production designers, art directors, and whatnot. There are certain studios where, like, let's say Naughty Dog, right, where the bar is so high in order to get in. You have to be on a certain level.
Yeah.
But that's like a completely different kind of production. But then there are games, like mobile games, are not necessarily that great looking, but they make way more money than regular games. There are movies that, if you look at the concept art made for those movies, like, oh my god, like that would not even stick on the art station.
No.
But a producer or whoever is, you know, responsible for you know, making sure that the product is done, they don't care.
But you think they don't care
don't.
because I don't know what are you
I
saying?
think the average perception of art is that there's a certain threshold that you can reach, and then everything above is kind of squashed down. Meaning, good artists and great artists, they're all kind of same in the eye of the most of the people.
You think
right?
so?
I'm convinced that it is that way.
You worked in film more than I have, so you would know that.
It's
world
not
more.
only film; it's everywhere. And obviously, there are niche projects or certain projects where it doesn't matter. But tell me, if you guys worked enough, whether it's freelance or not, how many times you run into an issue where you did not have time to actually design something, and the emphasis was on the volume. I'm pretty sure there was many projects like that, right?
Okay, well, there's a couple things. I agree with what you're saying, I think, in some ways. But in some ways, I don't know how to process it because I can't but think one way. I can only think I have to get better. All the work has to be better.
Right.
Better is worthwhile.
But let me
it's
tie
almost
it.
like a religious belief. Like, it doesn't matter if that's factually accurate.
Right.
It's just the only way to live.
But if you tie it to AI, which will replace most of the labor work, right?
Yeah.
Even for what we do, it will just replace it.
Yeah.
If you tie it to AI, and then if you tie it to cost of making things, like everything becomes cheaper and cheaper in general, right? If you look at the budgets of films, I don't think the budget for how much production takes versus how much marketing and VFX have to take. Like, VFX is like right now pretty big, but I would argue the marketing aspect of it is even bigger than it ever been. But the production itself, I don't think it costs more.
So what are you saying?
What I'm saying is, if you're okay, most of the people that make products, right? Not come up with products, but make products, make them happen, are business-minded people.
Yeah.
You have to be business-minded in order to see where the money is, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest problems with artists. Like, we're not business-minded at all.
Right.
It's just like not our personality trait. It's very difficult to be smart about your finances.
Yeah.
Because we like, oh, I just want to paint. Like, how many times you hear that? I just want to paint, right? So when it comes to that, anytime you make a project, you want to make it as cheap as possible and as good as possible, right? But there's always a threshold for both. You kind of find a good balance. If everything there's the reality is everything is becoming easier, and the ability to hit that bar where it's good enough for the product is shrinking. Like the distance between good enough and how much you can make just from through the automation, right? So when it comes to software, it's a good argument to say like you adapt. It's becoming easier. You can make better stuff, but then design comes in. All of those things come in, right? With AI, it's such a big unknown because like if you look at how good AI already is in terms of even just VFX, I was watching. I had this conversation with Ash, when one of my previous might have been like even the last podcast where we're talking about what's new in AI world, and you know you can well I don't think it's production ready, but they've tested the idea of making the voice like you don't have to speak anymore as long as there's enough samples of your voice. You can basically type in the words and it will perfectly match the tonality of it. And then there is like once you have a mock-up version of your face, it automatically based on different versions of your face automatically rigs it, and then makes it that you only type in what you have to say and the rig will start saying it.
Right, but what's your point?
And there is
what's
animation,
your
right?
overarching point about this? You're saying technology is taking over a lot of these things,
Right.
And you're
And
also
we're
saying,
talking about kids coming into the industry and
Yeah,
whatnot.
you're also-
I think what happens is that the industry will become so competitive at certain point. It will become so competitive that it's going to be very difficult to justify the amount of work you have to do and what you get out of it.
what do you mean?
Like it's not gonna be right now. It's not easy to be like world class artist, and you guys certainly are world class, right? I would say so.
Good at managing world class.
Yeah,
Thanks,
but
Mache.
it's not easy, right? It requires years of
Well,
of learning and preparation and
Yeah,
whatnot.
but what are you saying is going to happen? What's your? I feel a doomsday.
I'm not saying it's a
apocalyptic
doomsday.
theory
I
coming on.
think
What are you saying that? What is your?
it's
apocalyptic-
inevitable. Don't get me wrong.
Well,
it's
what's the
inevitable.
sad
What are you
thing-
worried
Yeah,
about?
I'm
what
not.
are you
I'm
worried
not.
about?
I'm not
What's the sad
sad
thing that's
about
gonna
it.
Happen? What's the thing that's going to happen that you're saying you're worried about?
I don't know. I think automation will start like really creeping into areas that we never thought it will creep into.
I think so too, and I think it's possible that robots could do everything, and we'll just get paid a stipend every month and live our stupid lives.
Yeah,
And all
maybe.
We'll have, and all we'll have is an existential crisis. But I think that's a global human thing.
I'm not saying. Okay.
Until the robot
I'm saying it's
uprising, I think
worrisome.
that's-
I'm not saying necessarily it's a bad or good thing because I don't know.
No.
Like I'm just too stupid
Well,
to know.
I'll say this: I have a more hopeful. Let me
Right?
tell you my experience.
I was born on a potato farm.
Yeah.
Like what the hell?
Yeah,
I'm just too
I
stupid.
was born different. I was born like very entitled. Like I was
Right.
given a lot. Like when I grew up, a lot of resources, and also I was given an attitude that which is that I can do anything. In the last year, you were asking what happened this year that was like super noteworthy. Well, this year not this year, but 3 years ago, I started writing. So
Yeah.
I worked on a story, an animated movie, and this year I was able to pitch it to 3 studios: Illumination and DreamWorks and Netflix. And in those meetings, every studio kind of had a different sort of attitude about how much they cared about what the artist had to say necessarily. But I agree with them. They have a business obligation. The movie costs $150 million. I'm asking for $150 million for or to start the process of that. That's an outrageous ask. The fact that they're even meeting with me is incredible. But Netflix was because they're new, maybe, and because they have a ton of money, they were a little more incredibly very interested in why I care about this. Why does it matter to me personally? Why is this something that I personally have to do? So even my experience with these top executives at huge places that have hundreds of millions of dollars, even in DreamWorks, I felt this too. There was still an element of why does this matter to you as a human being? Because in the end, if the story has to resonate, and this isn't art, this is writing, if the story is going to resonate with people, it has to connect with you as a human being.
Yeah, for sure.
So in the regards to how art is affected by that, well, if the trees in the background of a movie can all be automated and it doesn't require an artist to design and style all the branches as carefully, and they save $10 million because of it, it's because the fucking trees didn't matter that much anyway.
Right.
The shot was turning for 1 second, and the quality of those trees was irrelevant. So the master tree designer who lost his job, he needs to find another job because his job is not that important. And I think that's the hard reality of even I think doing concept art is we're in charge of the visuals, right? But when you're playing The Last of Us, your average person is playing The Last of Us, the graphics are going to be incredible, but it's not sure that someone is going to super notice that we make sure that the make and model of the car is exactly right. They're going to notice what the characters are saying to each other and what the emotional feeling they came away with. It's the same with movies. So I think, yeah, there's an incredible amount of money that is being thrown at stuff, and they have a right to consider money. But because of this streaming renaissance, I think the bank is opened again. And there's this huge new opportunity to be like, what's the best content? Because Netflix proved it could work. Who knows how long it's going to last? Because how does Netflix make money?
Did you see the
Irishman had
reports,
100
by the way? It's
What's
kind
that?
of fascinating. The Netflix reports. It's becoming like really popular abroad.
What is?
Netflix.
Oh.
It's the European market is almost as large as getting very close to the size of U.S. market.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah. And
it's not a U.S. thing
I
only
would just
anymore.
be curious to know, like, Irishman cost 140 million, which is blockbuster money, right? Because they'd have to do the.
I think blockbuster money now is like 300.
Well, no, I think the most ever movie was Lion King was like 260.
I think 100 million is considered lower budget.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Come on.
It's not low budget. I'm saying lower
Because
budget.
Titanic was the most expensive movie ever, and it was 100 million. Well, anyway,
That was 20 years.
Lion
It was
King
30 years ago.
Lion King was the most expensive movie ever, and it was 260 or so, 270, something like that. So
Right.
140 for a talkie movie, where they do facial changing on everything, which looked amazingly real as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
And the movie made 6 million or 7 million in the box office because it was out for like a month.
Which in 5 years, all the facial stuff, probably AI will do it in the
Probably overnight.
overnight.
Deep fake
I'm just
will look
curious
better
how they
anyway.
even like they get subscribers, but how do they judge the cost benefit of that? So I'm
Right.
curious. Same with this renaissance that's happening in animation with Netflix as well. Klaus was amazing. They spent I think 50 million on that. So how do they decide what's recoupable and
But how do you tie that to the AI itself and the fact that it will disrupt I mean, it's already disrupting everything.
Well, we don't hunt with bow and arrow anymore, and I think I've said this before. And I'm sure a bow and arrow hunter who was transported to our time would be like, if I left you in the forest, you would instantly die.
I actually have a better question. Not how you tie it, but how do you think an average artist or someone who's starting right now, because like if you started 10 years ago, everything was kind of straightforward and simple, right?
But I
But
think
if you're starting now, like, what do you? There's just such an overwhelming amount of information that's out there, right? So it's very difficult to find the right
Yeah.
information in the first place. But in an advent of how easy it becomes to learn the craft, and the amount of choices you have to make in order to be as productive as possible, because if you make wrong choices, someone else is going to be more productive, and it's so competitive. It's very difficult for kids out there learning and trying to break into the industry. It's very difficult, very very difficult. I was on the Lightbox event. I was doing portfolio reviews, and it was like kind of an eye opener. Like how many people, even with like a really good work, were struggling to get hired. Because the amount of we like to consume content, and it's become easier to consume it. It becomes more automated and cheaper to make it. Meaning we don't have to have hundreds of people working on it. It becomes like Ash Thorpe can make a movie, like a short film by himself and two or three friends. 10 years ago, he would have to have like 50 people in order to make that
But
happen,
isn't
right?
that a really good thing?
It's a good thing if you're a caliber of an artist like Ash
but
Thorpe.
just fucking get really good.
That's not how it works.
Okay, but let me just tell you. Okay, I was a concept artist professionally a long time ago, so the struggle is far away in my mind. But writing as a struggle is not that far away.
Right.
All I've done this entire year is get shit on my face. And the one thing that I have to know, because I've worked with, I had writing partners. Bruce Straley helped me a lot, and Aaron at Dragonstorm, and all these guys have really mentored me and helped me a lot. And all I knew that I remember from concept art is I knew the way to get good. And I knew the way to get good at anything is always the same, which is you try really hard, you give it to someone you trust. You trust them, like they're good.
You find a mentor.
Yeah, you find someone who's willing to see your stuff. And,
Right.
And even whoever it is around you. Like I have people around me. I only have the contacts I have. I don't have Pete Docter and John Lasseter to send my thing to. But I send it to whoever's closest to me, that trusts me and likes me to some degree, and who's willing to give me honest feedback. They shit on it. I redo it. They shit on it. I redo it. They shit on it. And there's no amount of them shitting on it that's going to affect whether I'm going to decide to keep doing it or not.
Right.
That is fucking irrelevant. I'm going to do this
That is important
till
for sure.
I fucking die, and then I'm going to die.
Calm down. Calm down.
Either
You don't
having
have to scream.
either having done it or not professionally, but I'm going to do it till I die, and then I'm going to die.
I will buy you a dinner. You don't have to to yell.
And I will say, listening to what's really inspiring, we went and see Sergio Pablos, who just came out with that movie Klaus, that
Right.
animated movie, which is incredible. Uh, really unique. The animation style was traditional, but as you know, they had this tool that allowed them to do this kind of more rendered style of shading. It would track shapes and allowed them to put shading, but artistically where they wanted. And we went and listened to him speak. He pitched Despicable Me back in the day, and I think another couple movies. But he's been pitching movies for 20 years, and he's pitched some that have gotten picked up that weren't made the way he would make it. He just sold the idea, and now at 50 or something, he's making his first animated movie. He literally tried for 20 years. He's got his own animation studio on top of that, and finally someone was like, "Fine, make the movie you want to make."
It takes
And
time.
he made it, and that was really inspiring. Just to
That's
know,
crazy.
just to know that it's pretty much impossible. For me, the reason I picked writing is because it's impossible. Concept art's impossible. It's all possible. So we just went to a workshop with Sung Choi. It was awesome, and one of the best parts of it, although he needs to share his fucking brushes, one of the best. Yeah, Sung, you need to share your fucking brushes. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to swear. One of the best parts of it was that he was really anxious.
Where was that workshop, by the way?
It was at Brainstorm School.
Okay.
James Pick and John Parks.
Yep.
School. Awesome place. Great venue. And so he showed his process, but one of the most interesting parts was when he was a student, he was stressed about all these things. Money, job, all this. And then he kept trailing that off to where it would lead to, and he's like, get good at art. Get good at art, get good at art, get good at art. So just get good at the thing, and then everything else will kind of line up.
Yeah.
Or it never will, but you just try till you die. What else are you going to do? You're going to die anyway.
I'm not necessarily trying to find like an ultimate answer to this, right? I'm just
I just answered it for
But
you.
I think it really doesn't matter because if you're really good and your work is visible, I still feel like the industry is in a place where you will get hired. I don't think there's not enough jobs for all the really, really good people. There's just that. It's just the quality that everyone's looking for is you got to be really good. That's it.
I think one of the positive aspects that could be a highlight of this year, but just more generally last few years, is that you don't have to work for anyone to make a living doing that, right? I mean, look at YouTube market or Instagram or any of those social media markets where you can become like really good, really successful at it as well.
Absolutely.
And build personality.
With all these, streaming sites and everyone wanting to make more content, I do think that probably ultimately leads to way more jobs. I think they're going to want more people, maybe for smaller budget things, but
right.
I'm seeing like way more concept artists working in TV most of the time where they're able to post their work. At least I can see a lot of things like Love, Death, Robots or whatever that was called. Is that what it's called? Yeah. And Mandalorian, like there's sort of this new like middle ground kind of high budget TV where they need concept, and I feel like it's opening the way for even more jobs, and it's ultimately a more exciting time.
And I want to add on to that because I think just to remind, because I think I've said this before, but I think the attitude you have is really important.
Sure.
Because some people are really happy for other people's success, and some people get really mad when other people are successful.
Oh, that's so true. There's a lot of rotten attitudes.
Yeah, there's
there.
a rotten attitude. Now, I have a good
this
attitude
fucking guy.
on the outside and a rotten attitude on the inside. But on the outside, I have a good attitude, which is
Regular American.
But I try my best, and I think this is really important, to just give everything and receive everything. Just have it be a free-flowing thing. If anyone... And I understand that some people, I'm in a little bit of different situation than you guys, meaning like I benefit from other people being good, literally, right?
And that speaks volumes, by the way, because like that tells me one thing. You have your head between the shoulders in the right spot, not too high, not too low.
Medium. But I think that attitude, especially when you're coming up, if you find people around you, and I'll bring Nick Jindro as an example, who worked on Mandalorian and works for James Cameron so much he probably calls him Jim.
Jimbo.
Yeah, he probably calls him Jimmy C.
Jimmy C.
And he was a student in my Art Institute class, and now he wouldn't shine his shoes with my art that I printed out. Now, Nick got so awesome because he was good on the inside and the outside, in the sense that when he saw art that was good, other people's art, it made him genuinely so inspired. And then he would like, oh, teach me. And I remember
Would
when he
gasp.
was in
Yeah,
class,
like,
class, because he was so blown away by me, my ego got tickled, and I'm like, oh, let me help this kid more.
right.
You know?
Because excitement is like one of the main things that makes people good at art. You have to be excited
And
about
excited when someone shits on your face. Like when I would send my treatment out to people and had it crapped on, even like brutally annihilated. And I've been working on it for 3 years, and they're like, I don't like any of these characters. This all sucks. I would write, thank you so much. I really appreciate all that awesome feedback. I'm gonna read it over, think about it, and I can't wait to like apply it. And I don't know if I felt that way in the moment, but later, as it simmered down, I was like, you know, they did have some points, you know. And there's some things maybe I agreed with, maybe some things I don't. But I got a chance to chill, and then I'm gonna change it.
That's every time I give you a paint over. You're like, no, fuck you, and then 10 minutes later, another text. Okay, fine.
What are you saying? You're into concept art scat?
But yeah, I think
every time you give me a paint over, I'm like, fuck you in my mind, and then I go back.
You're like, no, disagree.
Yeah.
Actually, fine.
Yeah, and sometimes I change your stuff, and sometimes I'm like, I don't. That'll change the whole. That'll.
Yeah,
I did a paint over for you once.
Did you?
The Game of Thrones paint over.
What was the Game of Thrones?
Tyrion.
What? Did I do a little drawing of Tyrion?
No, you did a drawing of Tyrion. I did a paint over.
Oh
in
yeah.
my free time.
Did you draw dicks on it? I don't remember what you did.
I don't know.
That was a pretty good paint over.
It was,
It's cracking up.
Yeah, it probably
Dick
was
jokes.
dicks. It probably was dicks. We weren't supposed to swear because it reduces traction, but okay, we already swear it a little bit.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's your fault.
It's your fault for sure.
But yeah, I think what is so cool is like, you know, Nick and other artists like him, they enjoy the process of being like level 1 and like climbing to that stage.
Ooh,
And
yeah,
it
that's a
doesn't-
good point.
That's a thing, regardless of your skill. I think that's a part of your fucking soul that you need to have as an artist, where you're like, okay, yeah, thank you, but I gotta keep going. Like, I'm gonna push it. Thank you for that fucking horrific, like, total critique of my work, but I'm gonna keep pushing because I can see like the end result. I'm very excited to get good at this
and Nick
thing.
is the kind of person who always thinks he's not doing good, and I think that there's a perpetual, like when you have that attitude, there's also like a little perpetual like I suck forever.
Yeah, he's like, nah, man,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, like this will never be good enough, and
Yeah.
you could win an Oscar and you go home and cry and then slit your wrists, you know?
John Park's like that too. I'm like,
Yeah.
how'd you do those trees? He's like, nah, whatever, man.
Yeah,
You
like
could
these are the
do
words.
so much
Exactly. I think
Like,
John
shut
Park.
up,
I'll even
John.
shout out to John Park. He is the most positive dude.
He's so positive.
He
yeah.
loves everyone's stuff. He's so positive for other people's success. He's like he's got it on the inside, on the outside. He's not faking it. Like
He's
that.
the happiest for sure. Yeah, John Park is good.
Yeah, you're grumpy, so I don't know how my theory
I'm not
works
grumpy.
out. Yeah.
Am I
No,
grumpy?
you're a grumpy old man.
Okay, I'm like this. You know, like in Poland we have that. Oh damn! Don't die.
Okay.
We have in Poland we have this like potatoes. We don't peel them. You put them on on fire or whatever. They kind of cook,
Yeah.
and then you can like there is a crusty peel. I kind of have that attitude about
Right,
myself. Like,
Well,
inside,
you
inside I'm mushy and nice and
were
and
born
generally
to
good.
be in a place that doesn't have tipping or customer service or
Doesn't have
smiles.
tipping.
You know, that's where you come from. So you don't come from a culture of, and it's cultural too. I think part of it's cultural. You don't have like that culture, and you moved to California, and you got a lot of California now.
It was a culture
But-
shock
but
when I
it's-
came
but
here,
It's a lot
for
because
sure.
I remember when you first moved here, you're like, everyone's so fucking nice, these motherfuckers.
I don't. Now you're like on the e-scooter, Bluetooth earbuds, vaping. You're like, oh, what's up, guys?
Yeah.
And you're in
I mean,
your
you're doing an
sweatpants,
art
your Ray-Bans.
podcast. How unmache is that? Circa Mache 2003. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I cannot.
I wanted to ask you guys about social media because I had that
Sure.
question because I think like when I work, I don't know about you guys, it's really hard to not be affected by it. And even when I'm like doing art, like in the process of doing art, especially recently, I started working on a couple paintings. I've kind of gotten into like, I'm using social media when I post something to like check and see if it's good or not. Do you know what I mean? Do you guys fall into that trap too? Do you post on social media and then if you don't get enough likes, you're like, oh, I guess that wasn't a very good painting?
It's tempting to get into that spot, but I would say maybe 2 years ago, 2 years ago, I realized that being really attached to social media, meaning like constantly checking on what's going on, following a lot of people, and like really obsessing about whether something you do is popular or not, it became almost toxic to me, like personally for my well-being, right? So like anytime I would drop social media completely, like I was just like, you know what, I was just like not gonna pay attention to it for a week, I would feel just more relaxed and happy. And I made a conscious effort to limit the amount of social media that
Why
I
do you
use,
think that was making you unhappy?
and the way I look at it. So personally, the way I look at it is this, and I might sound harsh, very harsh, whatever. Read it as it is. To me, social media is a marketing tool. It's really what it is. I cannot keep up. Like I have a difficulty to remember all the names of the people that I've met or talked with. Like real difficulty, because there's only so many names you can remember. I was like, again, I was on the Lightbox, meeting all the people I met before and completely just blanked out. Like, what was his name? I knew that person's name. I talked with them before, and now I can I was just like, hey dude, like I say hey dude because I don't remember names.
That's how you know that Miche doesn't know who the fuck you are when you say hi to him.
Oh, hi, dude. Yeah, I mean, I think it, at least for me, social media is cool in that that's mostly all the people I follow are artists. So there is like a built-in
Right.
community on all the social media that I wasn't getting before. Like, I don't remember a time where there was
Mm-hmm.
a central thing that everyone was posting on. Like, everyone's on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. But I think, back to your question about likes, like, it sometimes is encouraging, but I think if it ever starts to turn into like, oh, I'm like doubting myself because the like number is not right.
Or you start a painting and you're like, will this get the likes?
Is this a 2K liker? I don't know. I'm gonna throw it away now.
Is
Yeah,
it the
yeah.
5K liker
Yeah.
or 2K
Like if
liker?
I do this experiment right now and post it, is it going to get the likes that I require for my
Right,
my
yeah.
emotions?
I think, yeah. I mean, I post like twice a year, so I'm not one to talk.
Yeah, you don't post
Yeah, I
much
don't
at
really
all,
post.
for sure.
But I
But
think
wait until you do post all this
there's
shit.
gonna be a reckoning.
All the shit that I've seen that Eytan's been working on. Oh,
Just spread it out and post like one
ugh,
picture
it's
daily.
making
Yeah,
me so
just
get
sad for the likes that I'm not going to get that Eytan's going to get.
Yeah,
And I'm
like,
going to repost
I've
it.
Once you start posting, it's gonna be like you could either do it like a whole bag of butter. And
Yeah.
there's no way I can eat that. There's no way I can eat
yeah,
that.
not in one sitting. Yeah,
Yeah,
I gotta
yeah.
pull it out. But yeah, I think I have like I don't have the time to finish things, so I've been doing like experiments, and every time I do something, I take a screenshot and I put it in a folder so I remember, and I look back and I was like, oh, I have 42 unfinished paintings since since I started this game.
And Procreate automatically screen records. So I've been
Yeah.
like drawing and sketching, or I'm doing an outdoor painting, and I know it's recording. And then I'm messing with something too long, and you're like, and I'm to myself, I have this thought that shoots into my head, like, don't mess with it too long, because then if you post it, you're gonna look like you don't know what the fuck you're doing.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, and I'm like, stop it.
You're thinking about the audience.
Stop
while you're
it.
doing
Yeah,
it.
stop
Wow,
it. Like, I
yeah,
need to
that's
snap out of
bad.
that so I can experiment, so I can try things
Yeah.
that may not work because I'm afraid. And I think another thing about social media, the broadness of it, you see so much different kinds of art, so you get confused about which direction to go in. And I'll say this is really important. Pick one person's style that you really want to try to go after that works at a company that you really want to work at, and just shoot for that exact style. That broad brush of like, I do a lot of concept art, I do characters, props, objects, realistic, cartoony. Like maybe when you're a veteran you can start dabbling in other things, but when you're starting out, just pick a road. Exactly, like a studio. A studio. And who cares if you get that job? You want to work for like Sony Santa Monica? Do God of War-ish stuff only on that train, and make your whole portfolio that, at least for like a few months, and then move on to something else if you want. But zeroing in helps you prevent you from seeing someone else's art, and you're like, oh, but I like Spider-Verse style. Maybe I should do a Spider-Verse painting.
Yeah, and I think limitations create great art in any case. And there was a huge misconception when I was in art school that I needed to learn all the disciplines at once, so that each thing, like if you're talking about like a video game, I had to put 1 point into each thing before I would go to the next level. But it really is much more like, what are the 3 to 5 skills I need to do that specific goal, rather than how can I do enough art to work on all the things?
Yes,
'Cause
and
that
learning,
doesn't
like,
work.
especially when you're learning software, because that's the big obstacle now for concept
Yeah.
artists. You're learning Blender or you're learning some new software. Learn the basics, but then have a piece in mind that you always are planning on working on, so that all those basics, and as soon as you get through the basics, try to make your thing with that and see where you hit things you don't know on the track that you're going on. Because just learning a 3D software and being like, oh, I'm going to learn every single thing there is about this software, it's going to take you 100 times as long.
And it also ties into, like, do what you actually care about. Like,
Yes.
show us what you're
Yes.
actually passionate about, because there's so many kind of portfolios where I see where they're like, one of this, one of that, one of that. And I'm like, what is your thing? Like, what do you actually care about as an artist that you want? Like, you've been put here to show us this idea you have, but what is it? I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing like little dashes of every other person I know that does that.
And you know what's tough is because when I try to teach people or tell people to like do a direction, I'm not trying to, and they're talking about one pixel brush, like working with us. I'm not trying to tell them, well, follow your heart. You can follow your heart, but like we only have a certain tiny specific things. So if your thing is like anime boob art,
Sure.
then that's great. But I can never hire you. But that has nothing to do with you. You could go and do that. So
There's a market for it.
There's a mixed message that I'm sometimes sending where I'm saying I agree with you that you're saying that, and I agree with that. But I also think if you want to work somewhere, it just so happens my taste is popular. Like I like awesome things. I think awesome things are awesome. Now, tons of people.
That's such a deep statement, dude.
I saw Avatar. I was like, awesome. And I saw Avengers, and I'm like, awesome. And I saw fucking Pacific Rim, and I'm like, awesome.
How dare you?
Like, I know. I threw that in there
How
for you.
dare you.
You hate Pacific Rim. It's fair. But I have the people's taste, naturally. Now, if...
The people's taste.
Wow. Thank you for descending on your throne.
I
am like the people.
I'm just saying I don't need it to be like super indie. I don't have any taste that is that different from what mainstream movies are. I like a lot of mainstream blockbuster movies. I think they're awesome. I aspire to that. So that just happens to be me. But if you have a niche thing that you want to do, it also can hugely pay off. Like Alberto Miego had this awesome art style that was his thing that he kind of founded.
Yeah.
And he was art director on that, and he founded that kind of look, and a lot of other people like got really good at it too, and they made a really unique, cool looking movie based on this unique vision. That's a really cool way to be too.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome, and people should, if they have a specific style and vision of a style they want to do, they should pursue it. But if you're talking about me and my company and what I want, I'm biased because I'm like, well, just make what John Everyman is going to like in a realistic video game if you want to work on realistic video games.
Yeah, but I do think even within video games, there's so many different styles and there's so many new IPs coming out that we haven't even seen a trailer for, where there might be a style that you're working on and someone is making a game and they're going to see once that you posted it, they're going to ask you to come work on it. But maybe you don't even know that that's something people want yet. But I think there is a lot of range of what your art can look like. I think as long as it is just genuine and cool and awesome, people are going to really get on board with it.
It's a nuanced mixed message because it's saying follow your heart, follow your dreams, but also do what is going to get you a job. And if those things align, you're lucky.
I think within reason, it's not that hard to do something that a studio would conceivably want and also do what you want. I don't think that it's that limiting, though. I don't think you just have to do one type of thing. There's stylized games. There's really like, goofy looking games. There's all sorts of quirky styles.
Yeah, there's Rick and Morty. If you want to do Rick and Morty style.
Like, there are things that aren't just realistic concept art. That's all I'm saying is what you want to do. I mean, obviously figure out if there's an industry for it, but there are so many more types of art that you could do these days, I think, because there's so many different projects.
Yeah, and coming back to social media, like you can use social media to yourself become a product,
Yeah, definitely.
So you can have a goofy
you can have
style.
a thing. Everyone on Instagram has a thing. I've noticed all the super popular people. They're like, "Oh, I draw the animals. I draw animals.
I'm
and
the animal
samurai
guy.
guys. That's my thing." But I do notice that a lot, and every once in a while, you'll find out like, "Oh yeah, I got pulled to work on this project I never heard of, but now I'm like leading it up because it's exactly what I do."
Yeah,
There are
you
those
can
opportunities.
become a business of yourself. Like. Look at YouTube personalities. I guess Ross Tran is a good example.
Yeah.
He was one of the first guests on the Art Cafe when he was like literally just starting the channel with like 8,000 or 7,000 subscribers. Now he's almost like 1 million, if not that.
Ross
already.
Tran is a great example. He was in my art center class when he was a student. When I taught at art center, for a
crazy.
semester, and his style was like really loose, really fresh,
Yeah.
really like expressive.
He has a great personality too.
Yeah, and he wanted to go that road, and he wanted to do a podcast, and his stuff is really cool. It's his unique style.
Yeah.
But when he was in my class, I remember encouraging him to do slightly more realistic looking stuff that was less painty. Although his stuff was amazing, because I was thinking from the framework of like, well, you know, you want to work on Last of Us 2, but he's like, fuck that, I don't want to work on Last of Us 2. I'm going to do my own thing
Yeah.
and become famous for my own thing. So
Yeah. There's a lot of avenues. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think the
there's
answer is
right and wrong.
no. I don't think so. I mean,
Coming
depends.
from
Like,
your own. Well, here's what I'll say. You have to consider everyone's bias when you're listening to them talk.
of course, of course.
I have a bias, and I try to say what my bias is, and then I say everything I'm thinking as if it's fact, but it may not be. It's just coming from my own perspective.
If you are looking to work for a big company like Sony Santa Monica or Blizzard or whatever, then obviously having a volume of work that speaks to that audience and being good at it, that's probably the best way to get that for sure. I'm not gonna disagree with that.
Can I ask you about a question I wrote down here that I kind of like?
Yeah.
How do you feel about and how much time do we got?
Let me just finish. We have
Yeah.
as much time as
Okay.
we want. Let me finish on the social media, because you asked like how it's affecting. I actually want to ask you guys a question. Do you ever like go through? Let's say you have a list of people that you follow, and you want to just like, you know what? I kind of got tired of this subject. Let's just do a complete toss up. I want to like only watch photographers now, or only watch filmmakers right now. Do you ever do that?
I never
like
done that.
change that?
No, that's cool.
It's pretty fascinating how it completely changes your feed and your like what's suggested. It's
Yeah.
like once I started looking at photography or cinematography, my feed completely changed.
Well, I only want to be angry about Trump, so that explains my feelings.
We're not getting political again.
That's cool. So what do you mean? You say
All you follow is politicians.
No, I weigh in. I'm easily baited, So I
Do
weigh
you
in.
comment on Facebook a lot?
I do comment on political
That's why I
things.
don't follow you.
Yeah. Well, I don't post a lot of. I post a lot of other stuff.
Yeah,
It's not
I just cannot.
Yeah, you're like I don't.
Anyone posting about politics, it's such a waste of time. Especially for me, especially. I'm not a citizen, so I cannot vote. So I don't give a fuck. Like I literally don't give a fuck. I cannot change that. Even if I wanted to, I cannot change that.
Well, I think it's also this weird in between, because social media for not artists is just used to express your opinion, and that's what it's for. But we all, like you said, we want to have it kind of be a business too. So
Yeah.
it becomes this weird thing where we're like, some people do both, and some people are like, oh, I want to keep it just, I have an art account and I have an account where I speak my mind. Like it gets in a kind of a murky
Facebook
area.
used to be a big art place, and then it moved to Instagram a lot more. And I'm kind of late to the party on the Instagram because the resolution is offensive to me. The fucking resolution is offensive.
You look at
So
it on the
it's
phone. Who
It's
cares?
disrespectful to the art.
But that's not what it's made for, right? It's
They
like it's
could
the same
up
with.
it by double, and it would be fine.
Okay,
Just
you know
fill
what's
up my small monitor.
what is the most popular? Guess what's the most popular? I hope I'm not wrong on that. People can correct me, but I'm pretty convinced it is. What's the most popular social media platform right now, in your estimate?
Snapchat.
Instagram.
No, none of that.
No?
TikTok.
I heard about the
yeah.
TikTok. My friend just showed it to me yesterday. Is that what the kids are all into now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the most popular.
Yeah, I guess
As far as I know, it's the
videos,
biggest.
Right? It's videos.
It's only videos of kids having fun.
Yeah.
Well, no,
And I
people.
think-
Generally people,
I
right?
think for us and for artists, social media, like you said, is a marketing tool. But I no longer post like except for politics stuff. I don't post like really personal things of my food or my dinner or my life or anything that's going on in my personal life.
Right.
Because I got kind of ousted out of my own Facebook. It used to be me, and I'm not going to start another page that's like I have a one pixel brush page, but I don't post to it as much as my own because my own is where the followers are. So I kind of got ousted out of it for that reason. So I understand why kids would want to like it.
I think generally the way I look at it is you can make good connections on social media because like especially with Instagram because everything is visual on Instagram. It's very easy to find connections with like completely random people. I got DMs from people I would never expect I would ever get a message from, and I was like super wild. So it's something you can miss
Like
because
big-
like it's very
like
very
fake-
difficult to find.
Yeah, famous people, big people. You saying
Like who?
Spielberg sent you a DM on Instagram? And was
I
like,
got-
Spielberg is all about DMing.
I got
man.
I got to meet and work with a guy who is worth almost $500 million in his businesses and his personal value through Instagram.
yeah, and I found every one pixel brush artist on Facebook. So
It's well, all in all, social media is great depending on how you use it. I don't use it for reading people comments on politics and what dinner they had and where they go
I
where
started
they go
to
for
tone it down
vacation.
because after like 3 years ago when the election happened, but now it's going to ramp up again. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. I'll try to keep it to a minimum. I want to ask you that question I had.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
And my question is because it's something of like a philosophy of kind of the way One Pixel Brush works, and I wanted to run it by you guys, which is I always encourage the client and encourage the artist to have less versions of a thing. Meaning, like, if the client wants a piece of key art, right, of like, and they know what they want, they like it's going to have this character and this character, and they're going to be doing a thing. We tend to not go the road where we're going to say, well, we're going to provide you with like 10 different compositions, and then you are going to just look at them, marinate all of them, and pick one. And part of the reason I do that is because I don't want to pick one. I don't want my artist to send me necessarily like 9 versions of a thing and be like, decide. I just want the artist who is the most qualified to kind of decide for me and for the client, like, hey, you told me what all the parameters are. This is what I think it should be. And that works for us shockingly well. Sometimes it doesn't, but like a lot of the time that really works. So I wanted to run that by you guys. What do you think of that concept? Do you think that do you think that's valid? And when do you think that's valid and when do you think that isn't?
I think for I think when they're trying to figure out like a really big idea, like kind of a more of a blue sky scenario where they're not exactly sure, it can be fun.
Give me an example of like a blue sky idea that someone would say to you that would need versions.
Like, oh, we want this whatever. It's like a city on a volcano. Can you show us different ideas for what that would be? Or some crazy kind of out there idea that doesn't exist. You might have in your head different ideas of like what the layout could be or what the geography could look like, you know? So I think in that you could give them, it's more like different flavors of the same idea, but it's not literally the same thing with minor tweaks on it. It's literally 5 or 6 different directions you could take it. And from there you can whittle it down, I think, very quickly. You could do like one round of that and they could just know, I can give you 6 things and just pick which one's the coolest, and let's do that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we tend to get a lot of realistic, grounded stuff, and I think in the realistic, grounded world, it's less necessary to have a
we
big
don't
thing.
need that.
Yeah, like if you were designing Star Wars ships and it was a bad guy ship, and that's all you knew, bad guy ship, Star Wars.
Yeah.
Then of course you want to play around with some different shapes.
Exactly. Like there are times when you definitely need to.
But if it's key art or it's a finished painting, and it's like we got 3 Navy SEALs and they're walking down a snowy city street, and they're looking for something, and that's what the shot is, then I kind of feel like that shot can only be a few things.
Yeah, there's only one best shot.
Yeah, so just let
do
let the artist say, because I feel like this is a trap people fall into, and this is why I'm going to acknowledge it, is they do for the client, they do the version they like, and then they do a bunch of shitty versions they don't like.
And then they never pick the one that the artist liked.
They never pick the one that the artist like. Exactly. So you want the client to pick the one that you like. So I feel like by giving them a lot of options.
Is that how you do it? Like you just do one version that you really like and then
A lot of the times.
Yeah, I think I try to, like you're saying, when it's a more
I have a different
realistic-
approach, by the way.
Yeah,
but-
that's why I
but,
asked. I want to hear yours.
Go ahead.
But when it's a more realistic thing, I think I agree with that. I do think I give them, like, this is what I thought through. I really worked it out. I really think this is the best idea. I might, even before they see anything, I might screw around and do a couple ideas for me, but I'll ultimately get pushed towards one direction and be like, here's the shot.
And here's a delicate thing that I think people who are starting out could get accustomed to the idea. I sometimes try to convince the client in words of what the best idea is after they tell me what their parameters are. Like they say, we want these characters riding a motorcycle and it's jumping a bridge. You know, I already know that they may not be sure whether it should be an aerial shot or a low to the ground shot, right? But I will try to say, hey, based on my experience, I think we should do a low to the ground shot. And because also we do a lot in 3D, it's really easy to do a lot of shots in 3D because you just have to move the camera and it's a quick mock-up. So shots don't cost that much. It costs basically $0 to do like 9 versions. I might move the camera a little bit, but there is one composition that's kind of good. They already agreed on a low to the ground shot because I just know that for the action feel, we're going to maybe want that. And I'll just push that on them nicely. Say, hey, we should try this. I think this will be best. And 9 times out of 10, they're like, yeah, let's go ahead.
How
and do
much
that.
conversation you usually have with the client before you go into like doing the sketch?
I feel like one of the obstacles with clients is that they may want to. Some clients, they may have a really clear idea what they want, but they may think that there's a lot of conversation or a lot of back and forth that needs to be had, or they may think, hey, if we give you too much, you'll be stifled creatively. And that's not the way I look at it. So I always try to encourage clients, give me every morsel of thing that you think right now. And if I see any red flags in there, if I see anything in there that's like, oh, that shouldn't be or that shouldn't work, then I'll bring it up to you. I'll try to have the courage to say, I know you're paying me, but in a nice way, I'll try to say, hey, this one part of this may not be the best. What about this? And this might work. So
It's
I
a
try to
very
have,
difficult dance, isn't it? Like
it's
just trying to
difficult.
figure out what clients really wants, because some of them are really cordial, will provide references and tell you exactly what they want. Even if they don't know exactly what they want, they will at least acknowledge that and tell you, okay, this is kind of like a blue sky, situation. We want to see
Yeah, no,
options.
yeah. Oh,
But
sorry,
there are but
go
there are
ahead.
ones where they just like, just yeah, wait. You know what I mean?
I've had very generally good luck. Most clients have a really good idea of kind of what they're after.
Right.
And the areas that are open for interpretation, I don't care if they don't know anything. If they just say it's a motorcycle in space and they don't know any other things besides that, that's fine too. But then if you leave it all open to me, I'm going to decide everything. And I'm okay with that too. And I'm not, oh, by the way, I'm not going to decide. The artist is going to decide because I'm going to tell him, hey, you just make it motorcycle in space and you make it the fucking coolest version of that you can possibly imagine. Imagine you're trying to make the best concept art in the world of that subject. And what I
Right.
think that does to the artist is it says to them, oh, I'm responsible for this looking good. The reason I bring up the versions thing is because when you tell an artist, I am the decider, but you provide me with a bunch of ideas, artist, and then I, as the decider, will go in and pick the one that is the golden one, is a little bit saying, I don't trust the artist to decide. And I found you get way better results from artists if you say to them, pretend like you only get one, and then send it to me, the one you think is the best. And then if it needs some tweaks or I don't like it or the client doesn't like it, that's fine. We can easily change it. But I think you have a way better chance of hitting a home run out of the gate instead of pretending like, oh, we're going to need to swing at 100 balls to get this already. Well, how do you know that? If the artist is experienced like you or you may not need to swing at 100 balls. You might be able to hit a fucking home run on the first pass.
I guess it depends on the client, because there are clients that hire you because of your expertise and they know exactly what you do. They've seen the body of your work and they know that they can trust that whatever you're going to come up with is going to be what they expect or close to it. Um, but then there's clients that just need someone to do the work and they don't know what that is and they just want to see option and they don't
Sure.
consider your expertise in it at all. Like you are a replaceable
Yeah.
target. I think that's, to me, that's where you have to sort of like figure that out before you even start working. What kind of, like, what the expectation could be. I know it's almost impossible sometimes, but sometimes just when you talk to the client, you can tell whether they know what they want or not, right? Like, I guess the most frustrating, because I think I know why you're asking this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the most frustrating part of this kind of work is like when you come up with like 6 ideas and they say either say nothing about it or say they just pinpoint like to a fraction of a concept, and many of them
Yeah.
pick like only,
I like the shoes in this one.
yeah, I like the
I
shoes,
don't like the
I like
clouds
the
from this
one.
shirt,
Yeah.
this is cool.
It's-
And then like, and by the way, and we need 10 more versions.
Yeah.
Like that's where like my blood start to boil, basically,
Yeah,
right?
Definitely,
We don't-
like you can have clients like that for sure, and I think what it gets down to is like, just to start out, can you as an artist at least have the attitude to decide, here's what I think is awesome,
Right.
rather than saying, is this what you wanted, this or this, is this okay?
Yeah, like
To
a peasant giving an offering.
exactly,
Yeah.
like to have, even if you
Yeah, show the
unluckily get a
confidence.
client like that, but the confidence to say,
Mhm.
this is what I think based on what you told me would be the coolest thing I can think of. You're not being passive about it. You're actually saying, this is what would be awesome. And so many artists that I see, and I'm sure so many people that you get portfolios from, a lot of the time it's like they don't know what's awesome. They don't know how to make what you're asking awesome. They just do what you asked, and they're not adding another thing to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure you've gotten...
Yeah, like they're not putting their own. They're not imagining that they're working on the greatest IP in the world.
Yes.
And it's all up to them.
They're kind of going on autopilot
Yeah.
instead of
They're
saying...
like, let me please master client. And let me see what hopefully master client doesn't like pull the lever and drop me into a Sarlacc pit.
Yeah, but it is actually like a skill to to actually snap out of it and realize, oh, I have to make it something that I would
That
want
I
to
think
work.
is cool.
Yes,
I
that
have
I
to
think is awesome.
Like, if you don't think it's cool, how the fuck is anyone else gonna think it's
Exactly.
cool? Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what the assignment is. That should always, I think, be your goal, is to do something that you personally, with your wonderfully developed taste, think is awesome first. Even if the client doesn't like it, at least you tried from the
Right.
beginning.
Yeah, we do naturalistic lighting on things. We don't do like terrible over like rims on all kinds of stuff. And there's some
No rim lighting on everything.
rim
Come on.
We just don't do super overly colorful made up lighting. Everything is like super busy, noisy, colorful. Because I don't like it. We sometimes get clients that I know secretly, because I know them and I know their work. I know they want that. They still don't get it. And
But what if they say specifically that that's what they want?
they never ever do. I think
Who
9
wants that?
Yeah, I think 9 times out of 10 I give them what I think is good, and 9 times out of 10 they really are like, oh, that is pretty good, but maybe can you bump up the saturation? And it'll still be naturalistic lighting, let's say, but I'll just make the saturation 10% more, and they're happy. Because I just don't know, or we get fired, because I said 9 times out of 10, right? Maybe it's 99 out of 100. Or we get fired. Now, occasionally we get fired off of something because we can't find it.
How do you feel about getting fired, by the way?
Sometimes it's for the best. So
Dodged a bullet.
I rarely have. And by the way, this is like experienced person asshole talk, because if you have enough clients to get fired and be like whatever, man, that's a good position to be in. If you're starting out, you're not necessarily.
It's very difficult to be in that position, by the way. Like
Yeah.
just
I
to get
can't
like
get fired.
Yeah, you can't. But like, if you can get tossed off a job, it means that you have enough.
I'm nowhere. I know people that are in a position where they can act like that, but they don't, because they value their. If you're in a position, I think if you're in a position where you can act like I can fire anyone I work with, usually you don't do that because you're smart enough to pick the clients that you know gonna work out.
Yeah, and I'll take work from anyone. So
Right.
Yeah, so sometimes we get stuff that like maybe we occasionally get fired off of something, and
Yeah.
I think there's a part of it that's always my fault, right? Because if I didn't foresee that the client was going to want a certain thing and I pushed on them too hard, then I consider that my mistake. It's
Yeah.
never the artist's mistake. They're just doing they're doing my thing that I taught them.
They're
to
just
Yeah.
doing your beating.
Yeah. I don't put it on.
Master Shaddy.
They might. I have a client sometimes say, "Well, I need you to find a better artist," and I'm like, "No, because I sent you that because I thought it was good, so it's on me. It's not on them."
Right.
And I think they're good. That's why I hired them. So if you think it sucks, the worst case scenario that I think I've ever had is a client seeing something that I thought was really cool, like fully like a solid key art piece that had all the and they had a crazy IP. And I looked at the artist sent me. We went back and forth internally, by the way. He sent me a composition that I didn't like.
Right.
So we had like 4 days of me and him going back and forth. The client's not seeing any of those, because I don't want them to see the shitty stuff, because I don't think it's good. I'm not going to send anything that I don't think is good. I don't care. Like, I'm not sending it if I don't think it's good. Even though they might think it's good, but they're just not going to get it. So then the artist does a bunch of versions. We finally agree on one. We frame it in a composition. It's done in 3D. It's easily changeable. And we submit it to the client. And the client said, this is unbelievably bad. Like, I can't believe you call yourself professionals. Like,
That's harsh.
That's
harsh.
I just think you need to find a different artist. And they had no feedback. Like, they didn't have a single thing to change.
Yeah,
So
when you
on
when you
that
hear
job-
something like
so
that,
yeah.
So on that job, because there was no feedback, not one thing they wanted to change, not one thing that they thought maybe make it better, not
but
one
did you
idea.
send versions or did you just one?
One.
Okay.
Don't like it. It looks like shit. And I genuinely thought it was as good as anything we ever do. I mean, it was just solid. And yeah,
Right.
sure, you want to move the camera back, you want to tweak the character poses.
Right.
I said everything's changeable.
Maybe the expectation was that they wanted to see something really quick.
Maybe. Who knows?
But then,
I
like-
never got a postmortem on it. But when I got that mail about, like, it sucks, I can't believe it, it looks not professional, you guys are bad at art, you just need to find a different artist who's going to get it better. It could have been really easily for me to say, well, okay, like, I'll try to find another artist. But the problem with doing that is that I have no idea how to improve it, because all I have is my taste. And I thought this was
Right.
good, and you thought it was amateur.
That's
So
not really a feedback you can work with.
I can't work
stuff
with
like
it.
that. Yeah,
So then I just said,
that's a toxic. That to me, that's a toxic attitude.
it was bad enough for right away, I just read the email and I was like, we should be fired. And we'll work out some financial thing where I'll bill you like less than cost. I just want to break you.
Sure.
Like, really, like half of whatever the time we spent on it. Bill you at cost. We'll just close it up because I don't have anything off of that I could work on. They weren't super stoked about that because they expected, yes, 1,000 apologies. Let me see what I can do with this no information. But that was one of the few times when it was like it was good to eject.
Yeah. Did you ever have had a client like that?
I think I've definitely had clients where it was kind of a poisoned atmosphere like that. Like I never once received any feedback that was like, oh, this is heading in the direction, but let's do this and this. Every single round was, what are you talking about? No, this isn't what we were looking for. And I made up something. I was like, you know what? I'm getting like crazy busy and I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to burn a bridge, but I can't do this anymore.
Let me tell you something too that's really, I think, interesting. Is that I've had clients fucking ream us on revisions, but this is how they start the email. They're like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. We love it. You just need to change these 500 things. Yeah.
I'd rather
and I'm like, okay.
I would much rather that.
Like I would happily, and then they say, oh, they just make a compliment sandwich, and it's in a lot of poop in the middle of the sandwich, but they make a compliment sandwich, and God
Some
damn
sand,
it,
some
it's
pubes.
so helpful. Sometimes clients, some art directors maybe, they're just angry all the time. So everything they see, and they think it's part of their job to shit on things because that's their value. But I think if you're secure, you can say, and I try to do that with my artists too, like even if something is really off, I'll just say, hey, these couple things are good, and then these things need to change, but not to get emotionally upset about it. And that brings me to actually a thing I wrote down, which is it ever okay to be a dick? And I think for me personally, it just never pays off. It doesn't help the artist. It doesn't help you.
No.
It doesn't help anyone. It's just better to be like, hey, I like some things about it, and we're gonna do 500 versions of this. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, being excited as an artist is important, but being excited as the client is also important too.
Oh, it's so important. That's what you give them to juice up. They get so excited.
Because this was feedback from the art director who was relaying info from the pissed off director.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was like, you're not even going to fight for us a little bit. You're just, whatever he says, you're deciding now, oh, it doesn't work at all, you idiot. But you don't think that.
You don't think that, yeah.
You're just saying, you don't even know what we're supposed to do. You don't have our back at all. And it was a really bad situation.
That's exactly true. It's just cowardice. And the biggest problem you get into is exactly that. You have someone who's critiquing your work who has someone above them, and they don't know how to have a voice.
Right.
So the person above them shits on them, and then they, even though they just thought they liked it, they don't have any more artistic, they're not integrity. And so they just tell you that it sucks because their boss told them it sucked.
Yeah, we would go to meetings and the director would be like, what is this? And the art director would kind of be like, yeah, guys, what is this? I'm like, you told me to do that. What do you mean? You were there. You know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking
about. It was not cool.
So I think the takeaway here,
He's like, what the fuck?
the takeaway here is stand up for your own artistic vision, and if someone doesn't agree with it, that's totally fine.
Right.
But you have to have this nugget of artistic integrity where like you're doing what you think is good, you defend it, and if someone is like, you're not going to fight the client, but if someone is going to say, well, I don't think this is good, you'd be like, well, help me to understand what you think is good.
Right. I think getting having a solid amount of expectations from the client, like understanding the expectations beforehand. Because once you have that, it's so much easier to say, look, it's not working out. Like clearly I'm not performing for what you need. Maybe I'm not a right fit. I can help you to find artists that will do it for you. That's like a a good way to negotiate your way out, right? I
do that too. I send a links to ArtStation. Just pissed them off more in this case, but I send them links to ArtStation, and I'm like, here's all these great people you can hire. But then I have this client now where they wanted some character designs, and we just did finals.
What happened?
Everyone was approved.
There you go.
Like, but not even just here's 6 sentences, because it was like military shooter type thing, right? So there was a sniper and there was all these things. It was a little bit exaggerated, but it was mainly that. I just told the artist, just do it, and then they just did finals, and then I gave the finals to the client. They're like, awesome, and I'm like, awesome, high five.
Yeah. You also don't know, like, a lot of times what's going on behind the scenes where you will find out there was a committee reviewing your work. and like 15 people had feedback, and that's
Oh,
why
that's
it
wonderful.
gets into those like
Getting
really
15
toxic
people to.
situations where you're like, we're going in circles. I don't know what you want. You keep telling me a thing, and then it changes. And
Or when you send work and someone else replies.
exactly, yeah. There are, but like,
Or there's
in
someone
those,
powerful who makes the first comment, and then everyone else is like, I agree with him, and you're like, okay.
but yeah, there's just been, luckily not a ton of times, but a couple times where it's been a toxic situation like that, where nothing I could do could break through. And I'm not just talking about like it was a week or something. We're talking about like months of back and forth, and still every single email just pure unhappiness, nothing else to say. And I'm like, I can't
Yeah,
do this.
I think
don't
as
know what
long
you want.
I think as long as you have your own sort of like sense of humility, like
Yeah.
you're not thinking like, oh my god, I'm the best, and what the hell you're talking about? Because there are we know artists that are like that.
Yeah.
That's
This
that's
guy
just like
Mache, I
impossible to
know,
work.
is
Like myself.
yeah.
As long as you have like that humility, I think it's easier to then recognize when you should fire, like literally just fire yourself from a project.
You fired yourself before?
Maybe once, yeah. Like literally just when I mentioned like it's okay to say like maybe I'm not a best fit. Sometimes it just changes the mind of a client. Like it just throws them off. Like what
Yeah.
the
If they're
hell?
like, oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Like
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
no, it's
yeah.
like it's fine. It's just like and then you kind of understand. Oh, okay, they just don't know how to tell you if it's good or bad. All they know is just to point out what's bad,
Yeah.
so that then you improve the work. I've had clients where all I got was just like those changes and this sucks and change that. This is not what I wanted. Like only comments like that. Never was like, oh, this is good.
Mm.
And then the project ended. Like suddenly it's like, what the hell? Like did I just fuck up and got fired? Like and they won't even like they just tell you like, oh, we're like shutting down this, or like we're done for now.
Mm.
And then you're like left with this idea is like, I don't know if I fucked up or not. But then they reach out again.
Right. I've had that happen
Right?
before.
Yeah.
I fired myself off a client where I'm like, we're done. We lost money on this job because you had 1 billion revisions.
I think
And
as
then
long as
later they hired us back again.
I think as long as you're not just like literally dropping a ball,
Yeah.
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 And you're like really trying to do something good. If it's not working out, it's not gonna work out.
I think if you gave it your best shot,
Yeah.
and you really tried to work it out, like, and it's still not working, yeah, I think it's perfectly okay to.
And then these are like experienced people problems too. And you have people listening that are probably like starting out. These are like experienced people problems. I would say like what got you guys to where you are.
But it
is that
relates, right?
It does, but you guys got really good to the point where 99 out of 100 times this doesn't happen. 99 out of 100 times
Yes.
people are like,
those are rare
awesome,
situations.
cool, keep going, change this one little thing.
But it's a good thing to keep in mind as a goal that I always want. Like I don't lose sight of just I'm gonna like kind of check out on this one and deliver meh.
Yeah.
I want everyone. I want to be as helpful as possible, and I want everyone to be really happy with it. Because I have Jewish guilt, I feel bad,
Me
and I'm
too.
like, oh, but I'm charging you for this, and like I
Yeah.
want you to get what you wanted out of it.
I am like a geisha too when it comes to clients. I'm talking like I'm all like oh I fire myself, but really like whatever master client kind of like wants, they're paying the money. It's my job to give them what they want. That's my attitude.
Once you accept the offer to work on something, as long as you understand the expectations, I think it's fine. Like you just have to respect the client but be respectful to yourself as well. I agree with you on that 100%. Like don't just get yourself in a situation where someone's just like literally abusing you.
Yeah. And you live in I think a more cutthroat world than I do, because we get hired for a lot of stuff where it's to create something where all the things are known and we just have to put it together in a cool piece of art, or the quantities are very known. You might have something where you're working on Avengers or something where you have to come up with some unique idea that no one's ever seen and imagine it yourself and hope they pick one, and that's I think a lot harder of a game.
Right. And my biggest pet peeve with some of the clients that I worked with is exactly that thing which I said is you're left with this idea that you don't know if you fucked up or not, and then they never reply to your emails until they need you again. That happens a lot. I don't know why. I to me it's baffling.
could be in the film world. It doesn't happen to me in games almost at all. Most of the
Are
time.
they just super busy or something? They don't have time
It's
to write
you
you
know
back?
I think that's what it is. Like usually your clients become so busy that to a point where it's just like reading emails becomes a noise that they don't
Right.
need.
If it's one less email they have to read or one less thing they
Yes.
have to respond to.
Because like you have to
They're putting
consider.
out fires all day too.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Right,
like,
yeah.
It's not critical that I answer this guy.
I will give it up to people to especially when you're doing freelance like we are. I'll give it up that like the people who are actually working on the thing are in a hellstorm of shit that as a freelancer you're just not involved in. And you know they
Yeah,
are
you get
involved in
shielded from it a
you
little
might,
bit.
yeah, but you don't have to participate in any of that battle. It's like you're a general calling in airstrikes, but you're not on the field. And they're in there every day getting shot with
In the
bullets.
trenches,
In the
yeah.
trenches, getting shot with bullets from a million different angles. And you're like looking at a map and being like, what about a helicopter here? And so we're really separate from the fight. So you kind of have to forgive them a little bit for like how hard it is to make anything,
Yeah.
game or movie, and how much shit and politics this is involved. They hate their bosses mean to them, and they're mean to their employees. It's just a shit fest. And
It
we're,
always
like,
pays off to
sitting
be
in our
nice.
room somewhere, like just doing an image by ourselves, calmly listening to
Yeah.
Enya.
It pays off to be nice and understanding. Like, and if you get the feedback like, oh, this is shit, like whatever, I can't believe, like you can give your one more shot, and like you do your like, okay, I'll try my best again. Like I felt I did good here, but let me try again. If that doesn't work, yeah, I think at that point it's fine to say like maybe I'm not a right fit, because sometimes that happens. Like you're not like you can't like you can't be a jack of all trades all the time. That's
Yeah.
just impossible.
But we should be. Like because
It's true.
Yeah,
There was this.
yeah, we
I
should
think
be.
I've
So
sent you that on
I
Instagram.
I get mad every time we lose one of those. It's not often, but when we lose a battle, I hate losing.
And that's understandable. Like
Yeah.
you're, because then you doubt yourself. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought I am.
I never
That's
think
always the
Do you-
thing.
Do you ever have a situation where you failed at something, but there was like a takeaway that you learned it, or was it always that thing where you're like you're
I'll
asking
tell you,
for the impossible?
in art, I think it's okay to, when you're in the industry for a decade or more, like I am, like you guys are. I trust my judgment. So if someone says that something I thought looked good doesn't look good, they're wrong, or we should be fired. It doesn't matter, but I'm not going to try to analyze it too much. Because I'm learning a new skill that's impossible, also writing. In that, I don't have that security, and I know I don't have the experience. So I'm much more susceptible to anything anyone says in a good way. Still, though, even in that, there has to be a certain point, and I'm learning that recently. I think it just happened in the last few months where I'm like, it's like art in which, like, yes, but I've gotten enough feedback for 2 years. Yes, but at a certain point, this is my taste, and I decided this.
Right.
But I'm just now getting my sea legs with writing, the confidence to think that I'm right a little bit. With art, I'm right. Or I'm fired. Whatever. With writing, I'm still like anyone who says anything who is a vetted professional, meaning if they've done a thing or they know, I trust that they know what they're talking about, I consider it very seriously, much more than I would with art.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think you do get, like, the more experienced you are, you get the confidence to say, like, it's not perfect, but it is finished.
Yeah.
Like, what I'm going to send to you. There are things that I think we could improve on and stuff like that, and to kind of have a little bit more of a balanced attitude towards, like, there's this, and this I could have done better, done more efficiently, but it's, like, good enough. It is finished now, but it'll never be perfect. But you're always striving as an artist to keep kind of upping the ante and just keep improving on it.
What else do you think, Mache? Got any more subjects?
I don't know. We could read into questions.
You
See
wanna
what
see some
people. Yeah,
questions?
I'll check if there's any.
What
reach
if
out
all
to-
the chat just says we can't
Yeah,
hear
people have
you?
been like,
We
"Oh
can't
my
hear
God,
you."
what about those guys? What's happening?"
How's that hookah? What
Let's
you got?
see.
No,
I don't know
what is it?
if we
This
have
is,
any
this
questions.
is blueberry muffin.
Blueberry muffin. Nice. And what do you got there is tiger skin?
I just noticed someone was talking about volume.
cheetah skin.
What the fuck?
Awesome. Some sort of large cat skin.
This is an Iraqi hookah. The Iraqi people, and I'm not going to offend anyone by saying this. I'm
It's
Arab.
very
Don't
interesting
do
to
it.
read
I'm
comments
Arab.
now.
Whatever you're
huh?
about
Listen,
to say, don't
I'm
do it.
Arab, so I can
All right.
say this.
All right,
Go
I
ahead.
got a
I'm not
question.
gonna say it.
I
Yeah,
got a
here we go.
question.
Oh, good.
Whoa, yeah, hello. Big Baloney asked, don't you guys think visual symbolism and how shape has effect on your subconsciousness, I guess, is just as important on how a story affects the people consuming the product as dialogue or anything else?
I don't think it's as important because I think a lot of times you could watch a movie with no shape symbolism in it and still understand the story from the dialogue and the acting. But shapes are incredibly important, I think. I just don't know that they're all equally important because
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's as important, but I think
Yeah.
a great movie would compose things in a way where, like, oh, it's supposed to be like in The King we were talking about.
yeah,
In
it's
that
used to
opening
enhance
shot,
it.
yeah, an opening shot. Maybe they didn't use shapes, but they used the color of that really dimmed down sunset where the sun was peeking through this really dim layer of clouds and creating this like eerie orange light, and the eeriness was important to tell the story.
Yeah, I think it's shapes are a tool to enhance the story, but I don't know that the shapes tell 100% of the story. Only unless it's in a very animated movie like Klaus or something, the shapes actually do mirror the story exactly. But like
And
in
the
a
colors
live
and all.
action movie, you can't really just decide, oh, let's make all the trees more round because it's friendlier.
Exactly,
Like because it helps the story. But they'll do it with, like you're saying, lighting or maybe even the shape of the lighting that they let in. But it just enhances what they're already
It
going
is
for.
art cool. Like in this last Star Wars, this is not a spoiler. There's a scene where Rey is like there, and there's this lightning flashing, and it's not really lightning; it's just flashing lights. But it's lighting her face from this side, from the front, from the top, from the side, from the front, from the top, and they're playing it off as lightning. It's not lightning; they just turned on lights and different things. But one is making her look evil, one is making her look normal, one is making her look happy, and she's a character in that part where she's conflicted.
Yeah, so it works.
This is not spoiling anything. There's characters in Star Wars that have to decide between the light side and the dark side.
Wait a minute. There's conflict.
There's internal
conflict in that
conflict,
story?
and that was a really cool device that like I noticed that they were like lighting her face, because saying it's lightning, but lighting her face in all these cool different ways right after each other to make her show her conflictedness.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
definitely
agree with
used
you
as
guys.
a
Light and color
uh,
do almost more than shape, even I would say.
I mean, going back to the King, right? The way the lighting and composition and shape language was created, that by itself told you a lot about the mood
But I
that
can't
you're
say
supposed
this,
to be
this
in.
Ray example I pointed out, I like noticed it. I can't say that watching The King, even the sunset thing that I just mentioned, I can't say that while
I think
was
there's
watching,
some subconscious.
maybe it's subconscious. I can't say that I noticed anything about the shapes, lighting, or color while I was watching the movie.
I think I did.
You did?
Yeah, I think because there's not a spoiler again, but there are characters in the movie that they're trying to tell you that are untrustworthy, and they're always sitting in a dark room with just a little sliver of light on them, and it's just subconscious things where you see like moments later, like, oh yeah, that I was right to suspect that guy.
You're right. That's really subconscious. Yeah.
Yeah.
They will do a lot of things like that where all the good characters are framed with light around them versus a lot of the characters that he ends up mistrusting are in darkness.
And I think too, we're kind of like winging it on this because we understand visual language.
You've read Visual Story, right? By Bruce Bloch.
Yes.
Yeah, so he talks about that a lot actually. Like the way you use shapes and the way you would do like a line script, meaning how your eyes are going to follow the screen. Basically, that would be just all that's like the script.
Yeah, I think we're not directors too, so we're pretty good at it, but we're not like, I don't know if we're not making movies and we're not framing shots like that often all the time the way a director is.
Yeah,
So
but if you're creating
I feel a little bit unqualified, and the parts of me that do it are doing it subconsciously, so it's a hard question to answer because I'm like maybe arranging a composition to have a certain more feeling without necessarily being super aware of it.
Yeah, but if you're doing a keyframe, if you're working on the keyframe, you are kind of becoming a cinematographer and director at that point, right?
Yeah.
Because you are sort of like designing the way the shot looks like.
Sure.
And it's the same with the concept art.
Sure.
Maybe you're not doing it on the level of Roger Deakins
Right.
or someone,
But
right?
for us, 90% of concept art is a small person in the foreground looking at an environment because the concept art has a storytelling element.
Yeah.
But that's really not important
Yeah.
for the fact that the modelers need it. This is something, though, that I will mention. I will put a storytelling element in every concept no matter what, even if they don't ask for it. Because I think a person facing away from camera, walking with a pistol held downwards, is always a crowd pleaser. It doesn't matter what the concept is.
But again, this is going back to you deciding that is awesome and doing it. You like to see an environment with some story in it.
Yeah.
They are never asking you to
No.
say, oh, and the character is like reading a book she found in the
No.
background.
No.
But you think it's awesome, so you're gonna do it, and then all that work has a sort of a similar
It
flavor.
has a meaning, yeah. And
Yeah.
then the concept art has a little bit of story to it, and it wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
But it makes it stack those likes on Facebook, son.
Well, but I think it really
Just
it
kidding.
definitely
Sorry about
like evokes emotions, and it might actually inspire the team that's going to make it. Maybe
Yeah.
even if you're not even thinking about that.
Yeah.
If you're just like, oh, 5K likes for the pistol,
Yeah.
got it. But they might actually see that for real. They might
Yeah.
actually see that and say, let's make a moment.
And
like
it costs
this.
very little time-wise, money-wise. It costs very little to do that one little thing that you spend all this time on this environment to make it like have a little bit of a story. So why not put a stick salesman up in that bitch?
Stick salesman is like 2005. We're way past that.
I know.
Right.
But you can still do a little. Do you have stick salesman?
Next
It's all about
question.
Rifle salesman.
Rifle salesman.
Rifle sales.
It's evolved.
I'm not low tech anymore.
Yeah. Next question. I guess it was like related to the conversation we had. So does that mean would you trust places like ArtStation as a way of filtering the quality you follow and what feedback you get? I guess if it's
Say that again. I didn't understand.
I guess it's if you know, looking at places like ArtStation, is it a good indicator of the quality that you should be aiming at, and if ArtStation is a good place for getting feedback as well?
Oh, you mean other artists giving you feedback?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Two
I
things
don't
I
think
would
so
say.
either.
I would say find a mentor and have them give you feedback. That's sort of like post a thing on Facebook or ArtStation and let crowdsource the feedback. I think that's not as productive
Yeah.
because not everybody knows what you're trying to do, and is qualified.
I don't
And-
trust like everyone to tell me. I trust, like I was saying before, even with seeing like deciding what movie to see, there's a select dream team where
Select
I'm
dream
like,
team.
what did you guys think? Then I'll know.
And
'Cause
find
we're on the same page on everything.
And you had a cabal of students when you were at Otis that made you guys all good because you guys were all working together.
yeah, we all had the same kind of goal.
Yes,
We were
and
like,
your class at Otis got better than any other class because you guys all had each other to bounce ideas off
yeah,
of.
and it was a lot of what you're talking about with the sharing of knowledge. There was no secrets.
There
with
was no
that group.
secrets,
It was,
yeah.
Show me how you do that. Do a paint over for me. It was very kind of open.
Yeah, it's hard to find people that are willing to share everything because they're all covetous of their careers and what they want to get better. And I understand that, but I think you should get over that. But I think, yeah, if you don't have access like you had access to these guys, now when you guys were all friends, these artists that you were with, who were the guys? They were all like working professionals, right?
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah, a lot of them are working professionals. Now they're like name professionals in the industry, but like at the time they weren't. So I think if you're a student starting out, you can send your work to, you find out who the concept artists are at Naughty Dog, right? Let's say. Look at the credits of Last of Us 2, Last of Us 1. You could find it on IMDb. And then message a few of
You
them.
cannot
either-
find it from the art book.
You can't find it from the first art book. That was painful. But you know how many beautiful and horrific dicks are drawn on the inside cover of my Last of Us 2 book? I got this mural of dicks that was just
I
incredible.
cannot imagine.
I don't know who did that. But sounds like a psychopath.
It's really cool. I would post it someday. But I think you find this cabal of people around you. So if you're going on ArtStation, this is the way, if I was starting out, I would use ArtStation because I do this with writing, is that who is the best person that will respond to me? And if you find an artist who is, tons of concept artists are working professionals and not like big name famous. Find one that you think is good, working at a place that you like, and send them something that you put your 100% into. Be like, hey, I have this idea for a thing. I was wondering if I could run it by you. And don't send it to them when it's half baked. And it's the same policy as dealing with clients. I'm not trying to tell clients, here's the batter. I poured in some sugar. Do you want to taste the batter? Is it good? Okay, if it's good, I'll start making. You're the fucking chef. Make a whole concept where everything is worked out and you think it's kind of good. Then get shit on by someone who's better than you, and it'll actually matter because you'll be pushing forward instead of them shitting on something that you half-assed to begin with and just lost and hoping they guide you. Get it as good as to the point where you think it's pretty good. Then the feedback they give you, you'll hate it because you already thought it was good, but it'll push you a little bit further.
Yeah, and I think especially true when the person you're asking is one of your goal kind of artists, where you're like, everything they do, I wish my work could look like them or that of that quality, then you trust them. But asking just anyone, it might give you results all over the place. Everyone's going to have different advice, but it is true. You have to sort of decide before you start, what do I even want my work to look like? What kind of things would I like to work on? And now start creating work in that general field. And then you could ask them, swallow sadness when they tell you, and then think about it and say yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, chef.
But just
Yeah.
if you're gonna go to all that trouble and ask someone, bother them, like some artist you never spoke to, and they give you feedback, better fucking listen.
You better listen. Yeah, by the way, send your stuff to Eytan because he's the nicest and he's the most likely to respond.
And he will definitely
Mache
respond.
definitely won't respond.
I never respond.
Yes, I try to respond.
I'm somewhere between Mache and Eytan, but Eytan will kind of probably respond, especially on
Yeah.
Facebook Messenger.
Someone asked about color profiles and color management. I never do that, and usually if there's like a color profile, I just change it to sRGB because that's what the internet uses.
Yeah,
I have
that's
no opinion
whatever.
on that.
I don't have any thought on that because
Yeah,
I don't know
it's
what
a very
that fully means.
specific. How to enter industry as an outsider?
Nice. We talked about that enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I would say so.
Yeah.
You just have to work your ass.
Yeah, and we just talked like making a cabal of people. Find them on ArtStation.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
ArtStation one
I
covers
think
it.
I think a collection of what we talked about in the podcast kind of answers that
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh, but I do want to say just quick about the ArtStation thing. I do think there is a weird thing you see where people are only looking at ArtStation for inspiration, and kind of going back to what we were talking about. Like, the artists I tend to like, and you can go on ArtStation and literally click on my likes and see, but the artists I tend to like are people who brought some sort of outside interest or outside knowledge and then incorporated it and made a piece with that idea. But it can be all over the place, even for, hard surface designers, for instance, love mechanical things and cars. They're going to car shows. They're taking a picture of some crazy vehicle they saw at the airport and they're turning it into a spaceship.
Yes.
They're not just looking at what's the coolest spaceship on ArtStation and doing that. And even for environment design, you see a lot of people will say, oh, I went on this crazy hike and it reminded me of this, so then I made that. And now it's this really cool thing because they brought in this little secret sauce from outside and added it to
Absolutely. Your inspiration should come from the real world. And if you the risk of ArtStation is exactly that.
Yeah, and so you do run a risk a lot of times where people are just saying, oh, the inspiration was some other thing that this guy just did better.
And also, a lot of times on ArtStation, there's a lot of beautiful stuff, but rarely on that main page do I see something that is specific to what I could hire for. And again, I'm looking at it from that perspective, but people are looking for jobs, and I'm looking to hire people sometimes. A lot of times it could be like a beautiful, like beautifully rendering thing of Harley Quinn. That's fine. But like, I'm not seeing the design. It's not like you designed your own character that goes in the Batman universe. That might be a job we could get. So I see the finished rendering is really quality, but we probably would use Daz for most of it. So there's a lot of incredible artistry on there, but if it's not concept art in the way that I would imagine I need it, then if it's just beautiful finished work, then sometimes I don't.
You're not really getting a sense of what their skill set is. You're just seeing like, oh, you're very good at rendering. I don't know if I could trust you to make up a thing because you're not showing me that you did that.
Yes, like some of the best artists that I've ever hired off of ArtStation sometimes are ones that have like all these black and white thumbnails, like Sung Choi does, or like Satish Kumar, one of the artists I work with, and he has all these amazing black and white sketches, and he's got these incredibly beautiful Blender made 3D renderings that match his little sketches. And you're like, oh, okay, well, it's both the things.
If you're doing like fan art, it could technically be a good print.
Yeah.
If you could sell it legally.
Yeah.
But you can't.
Maybe directors are looking at fan art. I don't know. Are they?
They do. They do. I mean, I would say.
Hiring people from fan art. I don't know.
With fan art, you are saying that like I could never work here. I'm a fan. You're kind of putting yourself in a different lane. Although I think it's cool. I like seeing fan art, and I think it's gonna be fun. But
yeah, I don't know enough to talk about fan art specifically.
What else you got, Mache?
It can definitely get you hired for
maybe.
like a major IP because they see, oh, this is kind of cool.
It's really fucking
But
cool.
see, if I was a fan of Rick and Morty, right?
Yeah.
Instead of doing fan art, I would design like 9 aliens that Rick would be fighting in a Rick and Morty world that I hadn't seen in the show so far.
But that's the nugget.
Because I want to exercise my design skill in the Rick and Morty universe, let's say. And I would send that to them. And how many of those would you have to send to them before they'd be like, we have to have this guy?
Yeah. I think that exact thing, that's what I always recommend to people too, is designing something that could fit into an existing IP. And it doesn't have to look like, you don't have to even write the IP on it, but even having that in your mind, oh, this stuff looks like the universe of Halo or whatever you want it to work on.
Yeah.
You don't even have to call it that, but it will probably get you hired if it's good enough because they see like, we could probably use a guy like that.
Sure. You want to go 5 more minutes, Mache?
Yeah, I don't think we have that many more questions.
Okay.
Dai or whatever, I don't know if I read that correctly, submitted $5 wishing us Merry Christmas. So
Oh, thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.
someone said to tell you that you're cute, Eytan.
Oh.
So that's interesting. Someone else said
Who
we
wrote that?
look like senior citizens in
yeah,
the meeting.
I am wearing a grandpa sweater, so
What else? Let's see. There was a question related to my art. I'll skip that for now. There was a more vague question. I don't know if we can answer. We can try. How to bring notoriety to a concept design portfolio realistic style. I don't know how to answer that.
what does that mean?
Yeah, I
Notoriety?
don't.
Like how to get noticed?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, back to Sung Choi's thing. Everything leads to just great
Yeah.
work. Like,
Yeah.
That's how you get noticed. You have good work, and you're not shy about.
Yeah, and you pick
posting
one
it.
artist that you think is the best at that thing who works there, and then match their style as best you can, and email them, and they might get back to you.
Another question was, hi, I'm from India, and we don't have a big video games VFX studios in the India. So I wanted to know how can someone from another country get into the industry, and what steps should you take to get a job? It kind of comes back to the same.
I have an Indian kid I work with.
Yeah.
it's
It
exactly-
really
guys,
comes
you
down
can
to the
freelance
quality
from
of your
He's
work.
on
anywhere
Art
now.
Station. Yeah, his name is Satish Kumar. I think it's SATHISHKUMAR.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's from India, and he lives in India, and he does concept art.
There are
on
certain
huge IPs.
countries with which is very difficult to do businesses, especially I don't know, like there are countries in the Middle East that is difficult to do, freelance business. I
true.
think doing business with China specifically can be tricky.
Yeah, but not. Yeah, but
If you're
it's
it
true.
can be
But
tricky.
true.
But in general, you have a ton of people.
For me,
all
they're not
over the
going through
world.
China. Yeah, for me, if they're working with me, they're just going through me. So I'm dealing
Yeah.
with the China bullshit.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm talking from like the U.S. perspective, right?
Yeah.
Because every country is different.
But now is the most.
But generally
open,
speaking,
the
yeah,
most
you-
open it's ever been. And if
Yes.
if you don't work with me, let's say you want to work with a studio, you're good enough, and you're from India. They're gonna bring you out here. They're gonna give you an O1 visa. They're gonna work all that stuff out for you if you're good enough.
Yeah, I think if you're good enough, because Mache, that's how you got to the U.S., right?
Right.
They
Yeah,
saw your
pretty
portfolio
much.
online.
You were just
on CG
gutting
Hub.
gutting rabbits to survive, and then all of a sudden you were working on.
They rescued you.
on at Naughty Dog.
Yeah, otherwise it would be pretty rough. Wouldn't be.
Walking 5 miles every day just to get snow to turn into water.
Are there some portfolio choices that should be different between film and TV and video games?
I think less so now because I think
I
they're
don't
more
think that
similar.
matters.
I think they
Yeah.
just want it to look good.
Yeah, and realistic, because if you played like I just started playing Modern Warfare, the new one, and if you played like Fallen Order, or if you play any games now, they all look the same. They're all kind of in the same lane.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, at least quality-wise, everyone's trying to like push the envelope.
But I will say this:
in a
I think
similar
I
way.
think I think the video game world concept art is like really aggressive and always changing and evolving, and it's kind of leading the charge in terms of like new things being developed and new people trying new
Absolutely, yeah.
things. And I think it's also easier to work on video games. Everyone's a little bit less picky. There's less egos because it doesn't come from 100 years of like hierarchical tradition. Like the film industry has like director is a god king, and everything comes down off of him, right? So there's this,
I would say film changes too.
Yeah?
Yeah. There's definitely I would say there's notable change in the business, basically in all of the businesses.
oh really?
I found that working with startups can sometimes be even more rewarding in a way, and less stressful than working in the industries like film and video games. So I guess it's just I would say it comes down to what kind of clients you are working with. It's really a very personal thing, like what kind of personality you are working with.
Yeah, but shoot for the biggest IPs in the world that you think are cool,
True.
right? So
Yeah.
Also because
I would say generally working with bigger clients is easier than working with the really small
I have to say
clients.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they have a professional art director who had to work his way up.
It's not only that. It's also the fact that they have higher budgets, which means that they might not be so picky to get what they really want because they cannot afford more changes or
right. And the person who's
iterations,
art
you know what I
directing
mean?
it's not their money.
right.
So
Yeah.
they're like, whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're
Exactly.
like, we have $100 million for this movie.
Yeah. It's definitely less difficult to work with with bigger clients.
Yeah.
And it comes down to experience and how many things are on the line. You know, in the bigger productions, it's you can fuck up many things and still come up with a successful product. In the startup business or small businesses, any cost is a cost that you know, anything extra you cannot afford.
And I will say this, yeah, this is a really cool industry, concept art. It's like the coolest job. It really is. You kind of lose perspective on it, but it's the one job on any project, whether it's a movie or game, where you just come up with the ideas and make a cool image, and then you just fuck all, don't have to be worried about the rest of it.
Yeah, you get to be a little kid, and you're like, there's a spaceship over here, and
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it just looks exactly how you imagined it, or
Yeah.
close to that.
Yeah,
That's a
it's
pretty
like
fun
so
job.
cool,
Yeah.
and it's so disconnected from all the bullshit of actually making something.
Yeah.
So again, I want to shout out to the people who make things, because their job, the actual people who make the thing, it's so much more of a pain in the ass than the concept job. The concept job is really like a high tower where you just get to like try. It's also competitive. I get it's the hardest industry to get into, but if you're considering between like concept art and like I might want to be something else in games or something, because it might be easier to get a job. If your motivation for doing a different thing
Is how easy it
is
is.
because
Yeah.
it's going to be a little bit easier to get a job,
Bad idea.
then I think just try to do concept art. But if you really enjoy, because I you know, when I use 3D, I could get into it. You know, like it's fun too.
Yeah.
But it's a different kind of fun. But if you really like concept art, then I think you should stay on that track.
Let's read just maybe rapid fire some of the last questions, and then we can wrap it up. Do you think an art director needs to be best artist on the team? Why and why not?
No.
I'm a
No.
living example of that.
Yeah,
I am the worst
no,
artist.
not necessarily.
I am the worst artist on my team. Now, in my own mind, I'm secretly the best, but haven't done it yet. But practically speaking, I'm not as good as I would say 90% of the guys. But I think one thing though is that if I lost too much touch, a little bit, like if I lose complete sight of the process, like if I didn't know any 3D, if I didn't know how they were making art, sometimes I ask them, how did you put that together? If I didn't know that they used Marvelous Designer and ZBrush and all these things, if I had a working understanding of those problems, I would be a better art director because I could comment on things in a more specific way.
I know good production designers, like the best production designers to work with, are usually the ones that have experience as artists. They are not doing that anymore, meaning like they are not working on the best possible level. Like if you're the best artist, you should probably just be artist, not art director.
And there's
Because
plenty
then you could be boggled with bullshit.
And there's plenty
all
of
the
artists
time.
too, like Nick, for example, who could be an art director, but they just love doing art, and so they just keep doing art, and they go to bigger and bigger companies, making more and more money, doing awesome art.
Yeah,
And
but that passion never goes away. Like,
yeah,
he still wants.
there is
to
certainly
just
something
make cool art.
totally. There's something like terribly tragic about someone knowing how to do art and then not doing art and guiding other people on how to do art.
Right.
It's not nearly as cool as actually doing the art. So if you have an opportunity, if you're on the crossroads of like whether or not you should be an art director or not, I think it's a really important thing to weigh whether you want to like not do art as much anymore.
Yeah, I actually have a question for you. Was
Yeah.
there ever a time where your judgment was overruled by the artist, where you were like, you know what, actually you're right, they pushed back in a way, and you're like, you know what, it looks like you're so good that yeah, I trust you, go for it?
No.
Never once? You've never been swayed?
No, here's the thing. I'm swayed when I don't have a strong opinion.
Okay.
All the time. I said, maybe I think it could be like this. And they're like, well, this could be cool too. And I'm like, fine.
Okay.
But if I think that I'm sure that it should be this way, I will have occasionally, especially the artists I've worked with for a long time, that might be like, well, I really think it should be this way. And I'll be like, I mean, I don't know what to tell you because I decide. But I don't want to make you super upset. But it's fine. It's on me. It's not on them. And I want to hear everyone's feedback to a certain point. But if I feel strongly about something, and by the way, most of the time I've been right. Like, or I might know something about the client that they don't know. I'm like, oh, I know this client, and I know they're gonna fuck us if that shoelace is wrong.
Yeah,
I
okay.
just know it. And they're like, do I have to change the shoelace? I'm like, I'm telling you, they're gonna hurt us. It's gonna hurt. If I give them the shoelace, so just fix the shoelace. I give it to them, and then I'm right. The client was like, yeah, that's cool. And if I don't do it, sometimes the client's like, well, what about this one thing? I'm like, yeah, I knew it was going to be like that. I think that's fair. If I feel strongly about it, it's just going to be my way, and I might be wrong sometimes, but it's just going to be my way if I feel strongly. If I'm okay on it, then – because it's the same as if you were art director. If you feel really strongly about something, it's going to be your way. And it's on me in the end too. If the client doesn't like it, it's also on me. I definitely don't pass the blame that way.
Right.
Right. All right, one more question, and we're gonna wrap it up. This is actually a good one. Between VR and game engines, what tech do you guys think is going to be a bigger part of the industry?
Have you tried the Void in Santa Monica?
No,
It's amazing.
Yeah,
This is-
it's on Promenade, right?
Yeah.
I'll
It's in
try it.
Pasadena too.
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a VR experience where you wear a full suit. The Void, VOID. I don't know what cities it's in. It's in like 10 cities in the world. And it's ILM did it. They can't possibly be making money because it's like $40 for like 15 minutes. The game looks pretty much production quality, like not AAA, but it looks really good. And there's like a Star Wars experience where you're holding a gun. You have a full suit on that has haptic feedback in the suit. You have a visor. You're with 4 of your friends that you can look at that are all stormtroopers, and you're shooting at like all kinds of shit, running through hallways, pushing buttons that are physically.
I
there
might
in
have
rooms.
worked on that actually.
You did? You did?
I worked on the Vader Immortal,
Oh yeah.
which is I might be the part of this.
Vader comes at the end of this one.
Yeah,
Is
it's
there a
my
lava planet?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
that one.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first thing I ever did. I put VR on.
Yeah, I was working on it.
That's
Yeah,
the
that's
first
funny.
one where I put it on. The tracking is perfect, so you don't get dizzy at all.
And you see your hands.
And you see your hands.
Without
Oh,
wearing
that's awesome.
anything.
Yeah, and you have a gun, a physical gun with a trigger, and you have the gun in the game, obviously. But you pick up your gun from a holster in the game, so you pick up your gun.
That's
and you have
cool.
it, you're with your friends. You wait for a door to open. It opens. There's lava right there, and you're like, no. And you can feel heat because there's heat lamps in there. But I don't know because I've never taken off the VR.
Right.
And that was the first thing I did was like, I want to be here forever. Like, I want to pay you $200 so that me and my friends could just stay here and play in Star Wars forever. That is the one time I was like, holy shit, this could be a for real thing because I don't want to go back. When I came out of it, I'm like, what are we going to do
Real
now?
world way.
Yeah, we're just going to walk and eat. Do you realize that all we fucking do in the whole world, all humans, we just walk around and eat?
Some people have to run and never eat.
Yeah. But modern life is really fucking dull. So I have a dream.
Wow, here it comes.
Yeah, I have a dream where we live in a world that's going to be a million times more. We're gamifying everything on Earth. So you're with a bunch of your friends. You all have little bracelets. Bear with me here. It beeps. It buzzes. It says, do you guys want to do this adventure? And it's AR, right? So it's augmented reality. You have clear glasses, but like things can be projected into it. And it'd be like, you have half an hour to kill this T-Rex. It's somewhere in the promenade. And you all fucking run around and you try to take down this T-Rex using your wits and your cumulative ability. So when you're walking around the real world, you'll see people like running on some kind of fucking adventure in real life. And people might be
Getting
like,
hit by a car.
maybe hit by a car, but like you have to stay out of the streets, or maybe it's in a park, and there'll probably be rules around it. But like what we do in our normal life is literally walk around and eat. And so
It's a little more than that, but
it's
yeah.
pretty much that. Like, hey, what do you want to do? Let's go stand somewhere and have drinks in our mouth. Okay, then what? Well, we could just gyrate in place to music. Okay.
I like
from
how
an alien's perspective, it's fucking insane how dull our
I like
stupid
how
lives are.
non-complex your life is.
How stupid our existence is. The prospect that we could have random adventures. And by the way, it's not about the AR. It's about me saying to Eytan, this is what we're going to do. You're going to wrap a fucking you're going to shoot that thing in the leg with a crossbow. I'm going to go up this fire escape. I'm going to shoot him from the head. It's about us, because when we're in the VR thing in the Void, it was us hanging out. It's not just about like playing no one. It's about us hanging out. So you get to see your friends in new light. You get to have different experiences with the people that you care about that aren't just sitting and eating and talking shit about whatever you're talking shit about.
It's why I love doing escape rooms. Like I feel like it's the evolution or this weird middle ground where I'm like, we're playing a video game but together.
Yeah.
And everyone knows what to do. We all understand the rules here. But I do think that the Void is maybe going to bring back sort of the arcade feeling where people are going to go and just pick which adventure they want. There might be like 10 or something, and we're just going to decide, oh, what do we want to do tonight? Like, let's go, we'll do this thing tonight. And it'll be like more of a communal gaming experience, because now gaming is everyone's by themselves, just sitting in a fart cloud with a headset.
You have to get out of
You
the
know what I mean?
couch and
I do
fucking-
I do like to create like a fart stew underneath me
Yeah.
first, and then I let the fart
You
come
dip
out.
the ladle in.
Fart
and you're
stew.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and then
it's not ready
occasionally-
yet.
Yeah, it just needs to cook a little bit more.
little paprika would
Yeah,
make this
you get up and just
delicious.
put some fucking Cajun seasoning. You'd be like, hold on, it's not ready.
A little bit of fart turmeric.
No, but watching that, what was that movie with the VR? The one with the VR?
Ready Player One.
Ready Player One.
Yeah.
I know that people might.
We went completely off topic, by the way.
Yeah.
That's not what the question was.
What was
but
the question?
Welcome to the podcast.
No, it was about VR regular games.
it was about what's going to be more bigger part of the industry, VR or game engines.
Oh, I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, I don't know what.
I would say both, because both are kind of going hand in hand. Like we said in the beginning, with the Unreal Engine, you can just plug into VR and walk around the environment that you just created.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with T-Rexes and shooting them with a rocket?
I don't know.
launcher?
You came up with that.
Yeah,
But
but
yes.
Che, why are you making them go off topic,
Yeah.
man?
Yeah. What the
But
hell?
I am super excited for in Ready Player One. It was like, oh, we're all stuck in this virtual world, and it's super sad, right? But I think it will be sad because we'll all be eventually in some sort of liquid bubbling green broth, and then just connected to some mind fuck thing. That's fine. That's what's gonna happen. I mean, it's
We're in
gonna
a
happen.
nutrient cocoon.
Yeah, we're in a nutrient
Just
cocoon. And we're not gonna
Nutrient
move,
cocoon.
floating.
and there'll be no jobs and no taxes, and everyone will just fucking be in the VR world. And everyone's like, "Oh, that's super sad." Fuck it, it's fine. We all sit in front. Can you imagine medieval people being like, "What are people gonna do in the future if they're not hunting?" Oh, they're gonna sit, and then what are they gonna? How are they gonna eat? They're gonna go sit in another place, and then someone's gonna give them food, and they're gonna eat it. But then what are they gonna do all day? Oh, they'll stand in a place and have a drink. I don't understand. Yeah, exactly.
You mean they're not learning the harp?
Yeah.
How will they attract a woman?
No, they watch on a screen virtual people having an imagined experience that they somehow can connect to, and they'll be like, "Oh my god, that's so."
They're gonna
inhuman."
play game. They're you know the games. Yeah, I know the games. They're not gonna play them. They're gonna watch someone else play them.
Yeah, watch them. Yeah, Twitch is on another level. But yeah, I'm excited about VR, but only because of the void. Go check it out.
I want VR to get to the point where you're talking about, because I don't have too much fun in the current state of VR. But Void is an exception. But most of the other ones I played, I was like, yeah, I kind of just want to sit on my couch with a controller if
Yeah.
this is what I have to do.
What you
Yeah, I'm not there
specifically
yet.
said is pretty much where AR would probably go.
Right.
And
Can't
I
wait for that.
I genuinely believe that AR is going to be future and not VR.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to wear a scuba mask thing.
That's
I just want to
one of the reasons.
a thing of glasses and have it work.
Yeah.
With nothing else.
I want to land in Prague and then be like, someone hands me an AR character hands me a briefcase and says, "We have a mission for you," and be like, "Yes, yes." How awesome would that be? Oh no,
That would be funny.
We're gonna just go eat at a place and then drink in another place. Fuck, ruined our whole plan of standing around.
You want a digital scavenger hunt that's just
course.
always going.
Of
Yeah,
course.
sounds awesome.
With colleagues who have similar interests. How about this? It knows because the cloud's gonna know everything about everyone. It only teams you up with people who like season 8 of Game of Thrones.
that might work out just well. Like
You know?
AI will take over all the industries, become hyper productive.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
we won't have to work. We'll get like the basic income or whatever
Yeah.
just to live our lives. Get AR and imagine things.
You
Yeah.
just scan your Amazon tattoo and it knows everything about you.
Yeah, I think we figured it out. It was a good
Yeah,
podcast.
great.
That was a
We
good-
solved it.
I
we
think
figured it out.
you know, like in the beginning we were kind of talking about AI and sort of like uncertainty. I think we figured it
Yeah,
out.
I think it's all solved.
Yeah, it's just like a full circle.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Ah,
All right.
We beat the game. Cool.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
We
there
just
we go.
solved it.
We
Thanks,
yeah,
Mache, for having
there's
us.
Yeah,
there's
thanks
no
for
other
having us.
podcast that needs to be listened to anymore.
Pretty sure this is it.
We covered how to break
This is
into
it.
concept art and the future of everything. So what else
Yep.
do you need?
Talk about
Pretty much.
T-Rexes. We did it all.
That was a good one. We had over to our conversation.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's a good moment to wrap it up. I haven't done any podcast in a while, so that's the first one. I figured that's going to be a good one because, you know, not only doing it with friends, but yeah, Christmas time.
Thanks for
so.
having us, Mache. This was fun.
Yeah, man. We should do it more often.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah. All right. Anyone who joined us today, thanks a lot for being here and listening to it. And if you're listening it through Spotify or iTunes or whatever, thanks a lot for doing that as well. And pretty much wrapping up right now. We're gonna come back next year. I have a couple of guests lining up and coming back to doing podcasts. Incredibly busy, but I'm trying to do it as much as I can. All right, guys. Take care.
Happy
Merry Christmas.
holidays.
Happy holidays and Happy New Year. Cheers.